welcome to Spotlight for Thursday, the 4th of January, 2024. Happy New Year. I'm Benno.
And I'm JP.
And here we are, JP. We just been in the pre-show with Matty, running through the January schedule for patrons. Get all that at patreon.com/grapple. But yeah, saying in the pre-show, it's been a while. Been a 3 weeks or so. Not much going on in the in the wrestling world. I say it's been 3 weeks. We have been recording. There haven't been spotlights, but there has been plenty of people to get into. If everybody enjoyed the Grappy Awards, the Patreon and YouTube member exclusive crappy awards out there. Hopefully the long-term listeners, I'm only just recovering from Ask Grapple. Hopefully the long-term listeners enjoyed that. Unbelievably, that was this time last week, JP, I think. With body clocks all over the place. Or it was 4 years ago, based on who our special guest was on Ask Grapple. It was, maybe that's why my body clock's all over the place. I don't know what year it is, what time it is, what website. We still the indie corner. What's going on? That was a fucking. Hopefully, people have worked their way through that by now. 6 hours we put out on the Ask Grapple, as well as 6 hours of the grappies and crappies. Hopefully, we've given people enough time to get through all that over the Christmas period.
Oh, I like to think, once you get into it, Ask Grapple, fucking fantastic. And as you mentioned, like we had the return of Rev Joe on there as well. At the
real thing that happened. If you missed it, go back and watch, because he was fucking on for. Like I was just on it. We recorded that. And I didn't even plan to talk about this here, but like we recorded that. We went 6 hours. It's 2 in the morning. I did a little bit of editing. I had a flight early the next morning. You know what I did, JP? Instead of going to bed, I just listened to the Joe bit back another half an hour, and I wanted to run through a wall. It was like we hit all high spots. The Bill was in there. Bit of EastEnders chat, bit of wrestling chat at the end as well. But as the great man himself did say, it was like slipping an old pair of shoes on. He said, I think he had a good time. He was a bit blown away because we'd forgotten that we'd back when Joe was on the podcast, we didn't go live. We didn't have a video version. It was all a bit new for him, but it was like all times, wasn't it? It was unbelievable. I had a massive smile on my face for like 2 days afterwards over it. I was so happy.
I was buzzing. I was absolutely buzzing. I think it was actually the thing that gave like all of us just like the energy to get through like kind of 6 hours then in that case, while drinking as well. So like it was incredible stuff and brilliant having him back on. He just hadn't missed a beat at all. I mean, obviously when we speak to outside of it, like, there's just the booking of EastEnders and stuff. It was just like, it was just phenomenal. He
apologized to me afterwards for getting the Bill calendar out. He's like, I was worried that it's an I forgot it was an audio podcast. I was like, don't worry, mate. People will flip the video version for that. People will want to see that. And he had a better background than we did. Lovely Christmas tree back there and stuff as well. But it's been a long time.
Brilliant with the decorations.
Oh yeah, it looked good. But yeah, been a long time coming. So I was happy we did that. And yeah, if you did miss it, do check it out. It was an amazing conversation to have Joe and Matty, like not meeting because I only obviously they knew back in the old days, Matty and Joe had a bump back when Joe was on the show, and we've been at stuff together, haven't we? Like the media con and stuff like that, and obviously there was a bit of crossover with Gareth and Joe as well. Obviously Steph was on a lot during that period, so it's good to get her on the podcast too. But like having Matty and prime Matty now, 2024 professional podcaster Matty, going back and forth with Rev Joe. It was like 2 different eras of grapple colliding, wasn't it? Exactly what I wanted, and it delivered to.
Well, we mentioned it in the pre-show, very Rock Hogan-esque. It was just this like kind of, you're sitting back and going like, fucking hell, you forget that they hadn't recorded together. Like, and this is something that we just take for granted because it's just like, for us, I'm terrified to look back at the amount of hours that we have recorded together. But yeah, it is fucking hell. Like, it was brilliant. It was brilliant. And also like for all of the guests we had on were just like, I thought absolutely tremendous. Conversation was fucking great. Like, it didn't flag. And afterwards, by the end, I was like, wow. If you told me you'd gone 6 hours at the start, I'd have felt like I'd been broken by the end. But I was like, nah, it's fucking great.
Same again next year. Yeah, maybe we'll space out the grappies and crappies better next year. Fuck me, I was.
We're getting towards 24-hour stream territory here, which you have done.
Me and Martin, yeah. I think he asked me once if I wanted to do it again. I was like, no. But then we're getting close, so maybe we'll consider it. But yeah, we'll definitely have to do something like that again. And yeah, obviously, it's been a while since we've done a proper spotlight. If people are listening to this and we did put a special bank holiday news update, we called it. Kind of a weekend show, kind of the type of news update we usually do on the Patreon, but we did put it out for free just because we tried to take some time off, JP, and that was always the podcaster's mistake. I blame Tony Khan for putting a fucking pay-per-view on the day before New Year's Eve, which was a nightmare to both watch, catch up on, be up at 7 in the morning watching this stupid fucking press conference, and then realizing the news cycle was getting a little bit away from us. So to stop us having to go 27 hours on this podcast, we did record that. We did put it on the Patreon in video form, but the audio is available for all on this very feed on the Spotify and everywhere else you get your podcasts. So yeah, if you're looking for our thoughts on Kevin Dunn, the Chris Jericho situation, which I imagine will come up again today as well, and of course, the sad death of Curtis Chapman, which we got a chance to talk about on that show as well. It's all over there. So yeah, it was the only way we were unfortunately going to get through this week, wasn't it, JP? News there, reviews here, and luckily it's been quiet since, mate. There hasn't been much going on. It's only the 4th of January today. There's only a 6-hour show to watch this morning too.
I don't know if your day was like mine, but it was just like binging stuff today. It was one of those, like, fucking hell. Like getting around to fitting in Dynamite in top of like getting up and watching fucking the Dome. It's like,
The one thing I'd say about that news update, I do apologise. I don't think the audio was up to our usual standards, unfortunately. It was me being off on the road and things not being normal. Hopefully people still found it listenable and enjoyed it enough. But like, I was in Belfast over New Year's, so that's part of the reason we had to kind of squeeze that in the spare 45 minutes I had while Steph's mum was putting the dinner on the table. And I was rushing off as soon as we were done to get that in. Like, honest to God, like, that happened. I had one more day in Belfast. I flew home yesterday. I got home at 11 o'clock. I cleaned up a little bit. I watched Dynamite. I slept for 3 hours. I got up. I watched WrestleKingdom. I fell asleep during WrestleKingdom. I woke up again, finished WrestleKingdom, had another nap, woke up, watched the start of WrestleKingdom that I missed, which is a fucking battle when you're trying to use that AEW World you've got going now, and then I did prep for this, mate. So that's been my 24 hours. So yeah, we've done a lot to squeeze this in today. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it was a very apt day to record at the benefit of hindsight. Looking back, and it was like, oh fucking hell, yeah, this it's just been absolutely bonkers. Because then I decided, well, I'll fit in a bit of Japan as well while I'm at it. So like, you'll get thoughts on that for like All Japan, Noah, and Stardom as we get towards the end. But yeah, it's just been. What a bastard putting in a show before New Year's Eve. I have to say, I'm not like in the main a fan of this. Oh, for fuck's sakes.
It did well, didn't it? I was looking at, I've been looking at the calendar next year, planning when last grapple might be, planning when the Grammys might be, just so I know, like, ahead of time. And like, I was looking at that weekend going, it'll be a fucking Sunday one next year as well. Watch him do that, the bastard. It's coming, mate. 100%. But yeah. It was fun. I mean, we'll start it off with AEW, and I don't think really a full World's End review is really warranted at this point before we get into last night's Dynamite, which unbelievably did happen in the last 24 hours, and obviously we'll be getting into New Japan in a bit. But do you have overall thoughts on World's End all these days later, JP? I'm excited. We'll avoid the match by match, but. Fuck me. I feel a lot more positive about AEW today. Not in all ways, but in a few ways coming off Dynamite than I did coming off World's End and that shit show of a press conference, which we covered a little bit in the news update on Tuesday.
Yeah, do you know what? With this, I kind of feel like it's the end of a really general shit story or stories I'm not invested in, kind of coming to an end. So I had to endure it, had to sit through it. If you ask me what the current direction they're in, I'm like, I'm more optimistic about that. That's the weird thing. But in long story short, if you haven't seen this show, don't worry about it. You're fine. Like, that would be my advice. Like, it is, I don't know where it ranks in terms of like what I feel like the worst AEW pay-per-views. But for a long time, it just felt like, it just feels like an extended show, really. Like an extended Dynamite with like, Dynamite and Collision level matches, and it didn't feel particularly kind of consequential. And like, obviously there's like kind of newsworthy stuff that happened, particularly in the 8-man tag. And like, I mean, ultimately there was just a lot of stuff that was just like fucking bang average. And it did switch on I think for 2 of the matches. of which I'm not mad on the booking of one, but like but even then they're not like so good that you need to go out of your way in order to see this show overall. So I think it's a rare thing for AEW to say, but I think it's a missable show.
We had it on while we were playing, saying New Year's board games, and we kind of had it on in the background, at least for the first part, until everyone got off to bed. And it was like, oh, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe there's and I have rewatched it since. Nope, it was about as mid as it felt from that kitchen table. And when you're talking about a pay-per-view that got possibly saved by Adam Copeland and Christian, and of course Kingston and Mox, you're not talking a top level AEW pay-per-view. My broad thoughts are saying that there is the the MJF out my leg full gear at the end of the year that was also fucking weak. But like this was it goes to that Tony Khan talk about, doesn't it? Well, at least the pay-per-views are good. They lost that a little bit over this year, and if we'd have recorded the crappies after Worlds End, if the calendar would have allowed, it might have been up there for my worst pay-per-view of the year. And I think a lot of the reason, I think the thing we can kind of talk about that bridges both as we kind of go through this last few days in chronological order, bridges the gap between Worlds End and Dynamite is the big reveal. It's behind you, mate. Adam Cole and. All of that. I mean, it's wild because we're talking about we are in a massive transition period in AEW. Like the other thing we didn't get to cover last week was MJF's horrendously written article that he put up, which was as confused and mixed up as his booking is. Probably gave you an insight into the mind of the man. But it turned out to be true. His body was breaking down, and they apparently had long-term plans to put the title on Samoa Joe on this show. But the biggest thing coming out of it and coming into Dynamite this week was the Devil angle, and just I don't actually know fully your response to it. Like we were sat there watching it, going, okay, so Joe's won clean, and I've got thoughts on Samoa Joe going forward as a big champion in 2024. Surely we're not doing the angle now. And then they did it. It was just and if you thought it was going to make sense by the end of the week, last night's Dynamite didn't necessarily help either, because I don't feel like Adam Cole really said anything. And for me, it was the time to do this reveal, because thank God it's in the rear view, JP, and we can move on from the mystery elements of the story and not drag it out any further. So I kind of agree with it being done, but everything about it just felt also 2 months too late, and everything about it kind of felt like, hang on, so where's the logic? Why are we doing the reveal after the match? Why did Adam Cole go to all this effort for this big reveal when he probably had 3 or 4 better opportunities, including moments where he could have been the world champion himself going back? It was a very leave your brain at the door, and if we were hoping for this devil story to end in a way that kind of made it worth it, JP, I don't think we got that. Even if there are elements of it I want to praise, but that and the promo afterwards kind of left me extremely negative on the fact that we sat through it all these last what feels like 8 months or so.
Yeah, a gigantic waste of time is how it felt. It was just like, and it's the obvious choice. It's the most logical choice. It's still a very
that's what I was on for too. Yeah.
But it's just this entire story. It just sort of felt like, so why has he gone to all of this trouble to do this? I mean, me and Matty have been talking about the Saw films, and obviously when we reviewed Saw, it's just in some ways, it's why would you go to all of this trouble? This is very needless and kind of pointless and kind of expensive for a storyline that in the end, when you just kind of break it down, it's the point where everyone thought it was going to happen was going to be All In soon after that, and it didn't happen, and the injury ended up fucking obviously derailing it. I'm just relieved. I'm just glad it's over. I'm just so glad it's over. I don't care. And already they're teasing distension in the stable, which is just for fuck's sakes. We've not even had a night yet. You can't even get through a 10-minute promo without kind of hinting at something like that. But it's just it was Black Scorpion meets Aces and Eights, and what we had was a sort of sub-Bully Ray promo trying to kind of explain why he did it, and it still didn't make any sense. It was just they just did it to take him out. Why? Because
people would push back on it if they did it, because what JP's alluding to there is back when they revealed the Aces and Eights, Bully Ray did a promo from the camera, didn't he? That split through the show and explained every element of the story, including the plot holes. Like, hang on, why did Devon join first? Hang on, why did you appear to attack one of your allies? And he explained every bit of it, and I loved it at the time. I honestly thought it's one of the few. In fact, I say one of the few things I quite enjoy Bully Ray and in TNA in general. It's a guilty pleasure, I suppose, at one point, but at least they made that effort to explain it. From the angle to the promo, like, I am no more wise on why or who or when or what, how this came together. Like, I think the biggest thing for me, like, I enjoyed, I say, the element of it where they did the reveal and the light came on and Adam Cole sat on the chair. That's as good as you can do for a man whose legs in a boot. Like, what else can you do? That's fine. But even from that moment, it was like, surely you want to stage this. You want to, if we're going to go to this effort, okay, first we reveal that it's the Kingdom and Roderick Strong. So all of this stuff, comedy stuff over the last few months has been presumably, and I'm making it, this is my headcanon, all set up, and all kind of, they've known this entire time that they were going to screw him over, I think. That was one element of the story. And then surely you would have, like, a couple of seconds later, and then Wardlow unmasks, and Wardlow reveals as part of it, because he's not really connected to those lads. I feel like his story is very different from them. But they just revealed it all together, and in typical AEW fashion, missed the fucking shot. And when they all took the mask off, the camera was pointing at MJF, wasn't it? Because of course it was. It's AEW. And I would have been forgiven of that if, like you say, the promo on Dynamite last night did that Bully Ray legwork and explaining why they were doing all the comedy, explaining why and how they Wardlow came to be part of this weird group. Why Adam Cole chose the moments he did to attack the people he did, why he attacked Jay White in the first place, which is basically a red herring, but wasn't explained as such, why they attacked all of the other people across the story, and why, this was the moment to turn on MJF. They just did deliver any of that. And you mentioned the Wardlow thing, like, that was the biggest laugh of them all. Like, Wardlow's just back where he was, like, right down to the dissension of Wardlow's going to go for the world title and he's going to give it to me. Didn't Christian just do that on the same, like, twice now with Luchasaurus / Killshot? Like, they've done that. Like, that's happened. Like, someone points out in the Discord, Mariah May and Tony Storm's kind of that same dynamic as well. And going way back when, Wardlow and MJF was the same dynamic too. So, like, as much as I hated the story, I honestly believed they'd have, like, these I's dotted and T's crossed. And because MJF is the great overthinker, he'd have thought about these little holes and he'd have an explanation for everything. But I mean, the other one positive I can say is, well, at least Jay White didn't forget. At least the Acclaim didn't forget. And, we had a little bit of payoff there to their previous attacks, and Hangman as well later in the show making reference to it. But, like, the rest of it, just, I have more questions than answers coming out of it. And if you're going to do it, there was so many better ways to do it than this.
That's it. You've hit the nail on the head. There is logical reasons for this stable to exist. But imagine, like, you remove the devil part of this and the unmasking, which you mentioned there about them missing it. And it was like, I thought that was the whole fucking point. The whole fucking point is the shot of somebody taking off the mask, because you get the big reveal and the promo, and instead it's just like lights on, lights off. Like, and I think with this, you could have had Adam Cole turn heel on him, and then you could logically have the Kingdom and Roderick Strong as his backup, and then them going to approach Wardlow to try and convince him of, actually, you should be with us because you need to get revenge. All of this stuff, like, the motivation's there, but this storytelling just isn't. That's the thing. It's like you've got the characters, but you're not able to tell the story for it, and because it's been so muddled, and it's being told by someone who doesn't get it and just wants to throw in all of the kind of, like, wrestling tropes, and then missing loads on the way out. So there was a way of doing this that was so much better. But I mean, again, I come down to, like, right, okay, we get to move away from this for a few months. That feels like the bit. I'm almost, because I'm so happy about that part and the future direction of, like, kind of storylines to go, well, at least it feels very different, because because MJF's not going to be there for a bit. Like, and it just feels like, oh, thank Christ it's over. We've written out a character who I've just grown not to like over the last, like, kind of few months. And I'm like, I'm just relieved that he's not around, in terms of, I'm going to balls up the storylines. And it's like, no, we might have some just fucking simple common sense stuff. So, without jumping the gun, but when you go to the end of Dynamite, I'm like, that's what I want to see him with fucking closing angles and stuff like that. That gets me motivated.
Maybe, but, like, is Adam Cole not going to be on TV in the meantime? the Kingdom not going to be on the TV in the meantime. What are they going to talk about? They're going to talk about MJF. He's going to be Poochie. He's going to be off screen, but we're not going to be talking about him still. So I wouldn't count with chickens, to be honest with that, because they're going to have to if they're going to make any sense of this, because he didn't do it in the opening promo. Like the whole, that's the other thing about this being so counterproductive. Like Wardlow's entire existence now is going to be based around waiting for MJF to come back. Adam Cole. I mean, I'm not an Adam Cole guy at all, and I never have been, and I think I'm just never going to be. I'm never going to get it. But even, for me who doesn't get it, they've stripped away everything about Adam Cole. People like. I know he's a heel now, which is, part of a complaint over years, but there's a reason he kept the music, and there's a reason he kept all the catchphrases. No, he's a devil now. That's his entire character. They're going to have to flesh that out. They're going to have to use TV time to get that going, and, I don't know if that's necessarily the best way to present him either.
And how has he always presented himself as a heel? He's presented himself as a face. He's done that for the entirety of his career. I always think that's a thing that's kind of bothered us, is he's relied on crowd interaction and stuff, which is things that heels, as we would traditionally think of them, are not kind of meant to be doing. And he's going to have to move away from it as well. The music's completely nondescript, but then you also feel like you're kind of like losing something as well. But yeah, it is.
It's like I'm one of them people who would criticize Adam Cole for leaning into cheers, but the counter argument was always, well, that's why he's over. Well, what do we do now? We're going to find out, aren't we? Roderick Strong, I assumed, like I said, the spin on this was going to be, he wasn't this idiot who was blubbering Adam. He wasn't this idiot who'd forgotten how to walk. It was all a setup. Apparently not. He is the idiot, but he's also smart enough to join this heel stable. How they're going to flesh these characters out and make it work, I don't know. I don't think it's going to take up a lot of AEW TV to find out. But like I say, I suppose the positive is MJF has gone, and in his place we've got Samoa Joe. As far as like a new champion. Feels a few years late in Joe's career to go down this route, but it's still Samoa Joe. The promo on Dynamite was a bit underwhelming, I thought, having just won the title for whatever reason. We still don't know why. He was over here for New Year's. He was in London. As we said on the news update, he must have jumped on a red eye and got there in time for it. Don't know what he
fireworks. Did. What? I mean,
came to see the fireworks. I think went to the South Bank like me a few weeks ago, but. That's, I suppose, what the reason Samoa Joe wasn't on Dynamite. So he didn't really get much follow up. He didn't really have the strongest build, I would say, going into the pay-per-view itself, because he was a side character in this story. It never felt like he's going to be your next world champion, but he is, and he's Samoa Joe, so I do think he'll pull it off. But what's your thoughts on the prospects going forward?
I think it needs to be a short run thing. I can't believe, I know they've said that this was part of the long-term plan. I find that really hard to believe because there are so many other choices. You just sort of think that's not the natural one that comes to mind. Am I against it? It's like, well, no, because I really wasn't enjoying the MJF run, like particularly in these last kind of couple of months. The Jay White stuff had soured me really badly. And I love Samoa Joe. Not as much as you, but like in the main, I'm like, Samoa Joe as champion? Yeah, I'm fine, but it needs to be kind of he needs to be a transitional champion. And I think he's fine for it because whenever he's been asked to do more, like when he had the promo battle with MJF, I just thought, no, there was a time people thought he can't do promos. I don't know why they ever thought that, because he's fucking great. Like he is. There's stuff about him that you can utilize. And I think his matches, if you book him effectively, like he's Taz in ECW at this stage of his career, where they're short run things, but they're really hard hitting and impactful. I think that'd just be a nice, refreshing change of pace away from kind of like longer marathons. I mean, I suppose him not being there, I wish he just turned up at the darts. Like that would have been like, if he was going to be in London, he might as well have jumped on board the fucking Luke Littler train, hadn't he, and gone along there. Could you imagine that if he just cut to him and you sat there with a load of people dressed up as Rude Hullet and fucking Liverpool Spice Boys? But anyway, yeah, I guess.
Because at the last show, he's got a darts player figure on it.
You could see him, if you could picture him in your mind, stood up there at Ali Pali chucking darts while people are singing Colo and Yaya Toure songs. Like, you just think, wow, fucking hell, like, interacting with the crowd. He'd be an awesome entrance, even with his music. Anyway, I'm completely going off on a tangent.
Charisma and presence in the darts.
And I think this is the thing about, I think there is, like, you've almost got to treat it like this is your kind of like your one big chance. And we've seen with like a Christian, like the benefits of having this kind of like old like veteran on top in the division. I think if you do it as a short run thing and you get to like a Shane Strickland, but it also feels like you can end up turning him face by default, which is really weird and kind of unexplainable. But it's almost like that's the easiest. Yeah, I like that's the thing. I'm at that point it's like, oh, okay, so he's kind of a face. He's not acted like a face at all. But yeah, I'm sorry.
What Joe can give you is a steady set of hands. Joe can be that. If we've learned anything from the Continental Classic, and it appears Tony has, looking at crunching the numbers, that it's been a good period for AEW. If you want to spot, I mean, Dynamite didn't exactly fully convince me of that with an opening 50-minute Raw promo, but I think you had to do that. You had to pay off the Adam Cole stuff, so I do understand it. But if we are going to lean in that direction, Joe is a solid sports-based champion to have, and like you say, it won't be hurt by being some kind of transitional champion where it doesn't last too long. So I'm hopeful of that. Like I say, it's funny, I'm a big Samoa Joe fan. I'm not sure how to make the call. Just because I've got some questions on Joe's like limitations at this age, but then looking at the options around, he probably was the man if it was going to be something like that. Where I don't think he's going to be the defining champion of 2024, and I think that's why it works. It's going to be a Swerve or a Hangman, hopefully, somebody like that, who's going to come along. But he'll work for now, and I hope we get more follow up on either Collision at the weekend or next week's Dynamite once he's finished his big jolly over here, but. On that note, on the Continental Classics, that's another thing tying Worlds End and Dynamite together. But Kingston and Mox was probably, if we're talking the positives of the pay-per-view, fucking love that as a match. Feels like it happened 6 years ago now. Fucking great. Kingston winning the entire thing for me was the choice. Considering what they'd done, considering they made him put his belts on the line in there, which never felt like they were an Eddie Kingston call. It never felt like, even at the start in his promos, it didn't feel like he fully grasped what Tony wanted him to do with the belts. Coming out of the show, I don't think they fully grasped it. Like, is the Continental title its own thing? Is it still a Triple Crown? They've stopped using that phrase. It's now the Continental Crown. Does the ROH belt still exist? Who knows? They seem a little bit confused on things coming out of it, but Kingston was the right man to win it. I've got some misgivings about how they're kind of characterizing his next opponent. I mean, Tony's the biggest Trent fan in the world outside of his own mum, but like I don't know if that. Having done this grueling tournament that Eddie Kingston had to near kill himself to win, does feel like it defines things down a little bit that Trent Beretta can now just get the title on Collision on Saturday. But that aside, I think we haven't really had the chance to talk about it. Overwhelmingly a success the tournament, and like I said, Kingston was the guy to put over at the end of it all.
Yeah, I think that's the reason I like the match so much. Is it was just a really good cathartic finish. It was the finish that I kind of wanted to happen all along, because it felt like, why is this bloke having to give up the 2 titles he's just won, one of which isn't yours to kind of give away as well. It sort of felt like a really unfair situation to put a wrestler in. Yeah. And then, but you book it kind of like really what you do a G1, which you have like what would be the people that the crowd want to win, lose the first couple of matches, create the drama, so he has to go on an unbeaten run. Faces somebody who logically you wanted it to be Moxley. It was the one that made sense. I know there would have been a desire to have like a Swerve Strickland in there, but with looking at this, it's like, it should be John Moxley. That's the person who he's got the history with as well. And I just thought it absolutely delivered. And it for once gave us like a kind of it felt to me like it's like, okay, I was really hopeful at that point. Oh, they're going to do some really good stuff with Kingston. Kingston is going to be like in and around that top tier, and it's going to be like hopefully him elevating the title. When he next challenges Trent Beretta, that doesn't suggest that's just TNT like level stuff, which I'm not bothered, but it's just like a kind of a challenger of the week, and it doesn't make it feel as special.
Just make it's like a G1. Tony loves belts and whatever. He must get a discount at the belt sale people, but like just make it so that Kingston is the Continental Classic champion / winner until next year when somebody else goes through the same tournament and wins. Then like, why is he putting it on the line? It doesn't feel like it.
So like Ring of Honor, do they have a champion? Is it just all amalgamated into this, which is like an entity you're trying to sell as a TV product? And it's just like, what is it now? Like, it doesn't have a champion. Like, it's got a TV champion, but it doesn't have TV. Like I don't understand like the kind of like the thinking around that stuff as well. But like, not to get sort of sidetracked. I mean, for me, this was like it was my match of the night, and it was overall. It was a very like rushed way of doing it. Like, you kind of wish they start doing with the Continental Classic now what they're kind of doing with All In, where there's a point very early on in the year they talk about wrestlers wanting to qualify for the Continental Classic, and it's a big deal to get into it, and you get like this elite. Like, look at darts. Sorry, there's going to be a few times I come back to it tonight. They book the Premier League darts. How do they book it? They get the best 8 players. It's got to be fucking like elite stuff. And they're putting Luke Littler in there as well. So it's like, there's the draw. There's like the young star to kind of go, Brock Littler, that you can kind of go with. There it is. There's a reason why I kept me powder dry on that one in the pre-show. But yeah, it's like you look at it and you think that's just like a sensible way. You want that to mean something. So let's get to a place where that really means like something, where people are trying to qualify throughout the year and it's a big deal. And you can have it as like, well, they get to, at the next big pay-per-view, they get the main event shot. Don't do it in a fucking briefcase. He just has it. You've won the tournament. That's it. Don't add jeopardy into the mix. You might have people kind of challenge. I always hate that aspect of what like New Japan have done with like the title. Like, they just inexplicably have to start defending it. And it doesn't ever feel like they realistically like lose it. So I agree with you.
Like 5 days later, does feel like it devalues.
But
yeah, I'm with you too. Match itself, great. You know, I love the finish, as you've been saying in the chat there. You know, the chop battles, the strike battles. It's a very different match from what they've done in the past. It felt like a real cathartic moment. Got a great moment from Eddie Kingston. You know, as we talked about on the news show, dedicating it to Curtis Chapman, which was fucking lovely to hear that name. The entire pay-per-view. So it was all very much a worthwhile exercise and great for Kingston. It's just pushing on now, isn't it? That where the question might be. But yeah, I mean, do you have any other highlights from the pay-per-view? I'd probably start with Christian and Cope as my highlight. What about you? Against all odds. Very much enjoyed that. I thought that was really good.
I didn't like how I thought it was telegraphed with Kill Switch winning the battle royal. So I was like, I kind of feared something like that.
You know, I really did. I'm stupid. I had too many drinks, I think. I was just like, what a weird pick. I guess maybe I just didn't think that we lived in a Vince Russo WCW where you can just give contracts to people and they can just sign their own name over it. And therefore, I don't know if that's how contracts work in real life, JP, but apparently that's how they work at AEW. Saying that, the only man who can pull it off is Christian, so maybe I'll give them some leeway. But yeah, I didn't see it coming for that reason. Maybe I should have.
That was my only bother with it. Was like, in terms of the finish, it was like wanting to have your cake and eating it. You want Adam Copeland to have the cathartic moment of beating Christian, but you want Christian as the champion because he's so much more fun and entertaining. So here you go. You create a scenario where you can do that within the one night, but it's like it's a little bit of overkill. But the match itself, I have to say, like, I enjoyed it because it was just a lot more batshit than what I thought it was going to be. And the crowd were up for it. It was like the crowd woke up at this point. Like, and almost like I woke up. I was like, oh, right. Because I wasn't expecting. I suppose in some ways I'd liked elements of this feud, like kind of against my better judgment at times as well. And the fact that they're a combined age of 100 in and of itself is fucking incredible. And you figure the shape that they're in, and both of them were technically just retired, weren't they? Like, these two lads were just podcasters a few years back. That was the main thing they were doing. And, yeah. And doing it on there, but I kind of loved it. I didn't mind the Nick Wayne getting involved and like that fire spot. Fucking hell, like
that was scary. Like,
that was scary.
Must landed on the back of his head, didn't he? But I thought Cope looked good. I really did.
Yeah.
I'll give him some praise. He looked both physically and in the match itself. It was a couple of pros who know what they're doing. You know, as much as I wouldn't say the man's a draw, and as much as I've got a lot of negatives to say about his promo work and his characterization, you know, still a no pro in here, and maybe we shouldn't have doubted they were going to go out there and pull it off.
Have him as Terry Funk. I was just thinking about it. It was like, that's what he could do. He could just go out there and have some like kind of slightly batshit matches. And in many ways, I'll enjoy those matches a lot more because he clearly has like a bit of a brain for this kind of stuff. I mean, obviously they're involved in the TLC matches, for fuck's sakes. And they're kind of like, you know, they get this as much as anything else. I know that's a cliche to use in wrestling, but I genuinely believe it, that they think through their spots and everything else. And I thought it kind of it worked on here, you know. Like, I know taking some fucking bonkers shit as well at the same time. But if this is what you do with Adam Copeland from now on, I'm kind of all right with that. I just want to see him away from Christian for a bit. I can't think of what feud that'd be, but I'd prefer it to be somewhere where it's just a bit more unique. But I don't want him to see him just doing pure wrestling anymore. Like, I'm not bothered with that. So, yeah. So, it was a lot more fun than I expected. I mean, with my misgivings at the ending.
And it's, you know, we're concentrating on the positive at the minute. I enjoyed the 8-man tag as well, with all the people from the Continental Classic. It gave a false sense of hope for the pay-per-view, to be honest, as an opener. But that was a lot of fun. It was just that middle bit that was the slog. You know, the Tony Storm Rio match died a death. You know, Swerve gave Dustin Rhodes 10 minutes of his time he shouldn't have given him. Miro and Andrade felt like Brock Lesnar and Goldberg when you know, we all knew they were leaving at WrestleMania 21. Yeah, it was that middle portion of the pay-per-view. Julia Hart and Abaddon was like, did the two of them know how to wrestle? Like, that finish in that match, you know, Julia Hart landed on a. I've seen Charlotte Flair hit some bad moonsaults. That girl landed on her own feet and still got the pin. It was completely fucking awful. But, you know, the positive things on either end maybe stopped it from, you know, being, as much as it's one of the worst AEW pay-per-views of all time, there is still positive to stay. But I would say the biggest negative on the show, if you want to go there, and ties into, if we're gonna, you know, wrap up on Dynamite as well, reaction to Chris Jericho in the 8-man tag match, which everyone in the room should have seen coming. We talked at length about the Tony Khan presser and everything that's followed up, and I'm very you know, sad to see the story kind of feels like it's petering out a little bit. I think a lot of that, at the time we recorded the news update, there was a lot of talk that Cosmo had backtracked, and while he, you know, maybe clarified a couple of things, I think backtrack maybe in hindsight, having actually listened to what he said, is a little bit strong. I don't think he's necessarily backed down on what the initial allegations are with Jericho, but it's quieted down. Don't know if you've got any follow-up thoughts on it, JP. I think that reaction kind of said it all, and I think them not having him on this Dynamite last night says everything, because, you know, I don't think they can have him on Dynamite for the foreseeable going forward, and I'd probably say good riddance too if that would be him thing. But yeah, probably shouldn't have been surprised by that.
No, not surprised by that at all. I was, you know, thinking to myself, what would he do? I wasn't expecting him to appear on there, because it completely, like, it was like we had said on the New Year News show. It was this, like, some people sang along with the song, others were kind of booing at that point, and you could tell at that stage when he's up there in the reaction. For someone who likes to kind of always credit himself with being kind of like ahead of the game and ahead of the curve, that's like a lot of his shtick. He really wasn't. He'd completely like misread, and maybe he couldn't have backed out necessarily of the match, but
am I asking too much? The other wrestlers should have said no, because I'm seeing, like, I was seeing praise for Ricky Starks for flipping him off in the match and not getting in the ring with him. Going, oh, see, Ricky didn't want to work with him. I mean, doing that spot is working with him. Doing the match is working with him. Like, I mean, I know, you know, there's other people in the match that, you know, like, maybe you wouldn't expect that of, and maybe I shouldn't expect that of any wrestler to do, but yeah, kind of spoke to the whole shit show that nobody was grown up enough to be like, this is a bad idea, and it was written all over his
terrible
face. Like, I shouldn't have done this, shouldn't be out here, and this has not gone the I can't maybe things have subsided a little bit since then, but I think he maybe realized too late, maybe he does need to go away, and again, for me that would be permanent, but even for a space saving exercise, I think he's probably bright enough to realize that's the one.
And I think he does. I think he realizes, you know, there's other things. He'll still be around, which is a problem in and of itself.
He's doing an investigation, shouldn't he?
And if there's
whether they've done one, he shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Like, people shouldn't be letting this go, and it feels like people are letting this go. Like, Tony Khan didn't answer. We said on the news show, God bless the media for actually asking questions, and fuck the members of the media who were there who wanted to ask Tony Khan about his favorite color as follow-up. But he didn't answer any of the questions. I don't think that anything has been put to bed. This is a major news story. It was covered by The Independent, whatever you think of it, the Daily Mail, all kinds of publications. Like, feet should be kept to the fire until we actually get some answers on it. Because it's grown to that level, so you shouldn't just be able to quietly slip back into the TV in 6 to 8 weeks or something.
Yeah, and wrestling doesn't deserve the benefit of the doubt. That's the other thing. It just doesn't deserve the benefit of the doubt. It like if there is legitimacy to this, and then there's you're relying on like the kind of the wrestling media getting its act together, and quite often, as you say, like the what they want to do is just move as far away from it as possible to talk about the other kind of like contract stuff and whatever, and all the other kind of stories which are completely incidental. But post speaking out, it's like, no, this isn't something that goes away. Like this stuff, you need to you can't have this. This is unacceptable. You don't just move past because of who somebody is or what their celebrity is or what you feel that they're worth to the company. It's like, no, like investigations and stuff need to happen. And like that degree of clarity, I'm just so disillusioned with wrestling that they try and move from this. But part of AEW's selling point was always like they were kind of like the ethical WWE. That was part of how they kind of sold themselves. They were different. They didn't allow like these kind of toxic cultures to kind of take place and take hold. But they do, and it appears that they have from the outside looking in.
This year, JP, Tony Khan was giving it loads about Vince McMahon. And like, for what everyone wants to say about Nick Hausman, I don't believe he's a fully pure actor, as we talked about. But like, for everything, you can say that he's out of like spite or whatever to win arguments on Twitter or whatever has blurted a lot of this stuff out. I mean, Tony Khan has won arguments on Twitter for over Vince McMahon's allegations and other things like it. And now in a quick period when AEW could do with some positive fresh, he brings in Ric Flair. And he appears to be standing behind, Chris Jericho, and isn't being, forthcoming. And maybe a PR person standing behind him might tell him not to be, but it does go against what we thought AEW would be long term. And I should clarify as well to Simon's point in the chat there. Don't get me wrong. I did expect the wrestlers to stand up. It's more of a false hope than everything. I know better than a lot where wrestlers' morals lie, but. Yeah, Tony Khan is where, as Simon does rightly say, where the book should stop with this. And every time he's put in front of the media, this should come up. And even if you don't get an answer, people asking the question meant that the Independent covered it. People asking the question meant that big publications covering it. And Tony Khan not answering became news. That's a lesson to take from this as well. And yeah, it feels like it's massively quieting down since even 2 days ago, JP, when we did the news show on Tuesday.
And I think that's part of the problem of this like constantly shifting news cycle as well, is that stuff can get forgotten and other stories. Yeah, exactly. And then people start to forget. And if they're not on TV for like if Jericho's not on TV for all the way like kind of past the next pay-per-view and the rest of it, then sadly that's what ends up happening. And that's why it's the job of journalists, because this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Why shouldn't, like, if there is things regarding like a kind of toxic culture within certain companies, then it is within the two major companies. It's obviously worth investigating. It's worth investigating at the smallest companies within wrestling because it makes wrestling better. And it gives it, and I always think it gives it a legitimacy. So the idea of having a PR person tell you not to talk about this, I just think it's the worst kind of PR. Because then you look like you're running away from it. And we live in a 24-hour like news age, and I don't think that works. And and wrestling, as I said before, it doesn't deserve the benefit of the doubt.
No, absolutely not. And it said everything, as we said, that their head of PR had to go up to Tony Khan and tell him to get that fucking stupid hat off and take those stupid sunglasses
for fuck's sakes.
Honestly, I wonder if there'll be scrums. Ramen says in the chat there, Jericho's going to be at one at some point, and they'll have to question him. Whether this might be the end. And that comical image of Tony Khan sat there in his stupid sunglasses and his stupid hat, talking like he's Donald Trump about we're the greatest at safety in the entire world, mate. You're hiding from CM Punk like 3 months ago. Fuck off.
They need to go.
Yeah, they might need to from both sides, really. But there we go. But I mean, moving on from there, and that was a massive low light of the pay-per-view, and everyone's work in the match was suffered as a result, and Jericho got a wake-up call, hopefully, during that moment. That's kind of it, really, as far as the pay-per-view goes, unless you've got anything major else to say, JP. Did you, on a positive spin, I think Dynamite, despite the opening program, despite the Undisputed Kingdom, which is, as Jamesy said on Twitter, one of the most lazy names I've ever heard. And they're 15 minutes, and a couple of the other maybe more bad creative decisions in the show. It was a very good in-ring show, and there was some, as you said earlier, some definitive, really good creative at the end of it, as well as the top level in-ring that we got on Dynamite last night, JP.
Oh, I'm back, I think. I think I'm back now. Sorry, Wi-Fi been completely playing up there.
Great matches on Dynamite.
Ah, there we go. What? Sorry, say that last bit again. I think I heard matches on Dynamite, and that was that was the thing. It completely went there. Apologies. I know you were explaining that it was like a reset of a Dynamite and things like that as well. Am I right in thinking you said that? Okay.
Yeah. Good Dynamite, good matches, good. Some bad creative, but a couple of positive signs as well.
It is, and like the rating wouldn't suggest that. It's like 801,000, like hardly kind of. Gangbuster stuff, but a show that kind of needed to happen. And don't get me wrong, like obviously we've said our bit regarding the kind of like the promo and everything else, but from a match perspective, I know like I enjoyed this pretty much as anything on the pay-per-view, but like Takeshita versus Darby Allin was fucking like great fun.
I think it was better than it on WrestleKingdom.
Yeah,
honestly. I think it might be.
Yeah, I think I'd go along with that. That's how it is.
It was so good. It was so good.
And it just made you think, okay, there's if you get behind like Takeshita, he is so good in the ring that like there's so much value you can have out of him, particularly if you're like building him up as being like a contender to a pay-per-view. And you just think if AEW pay-per-views kind of sell on the kind of concept themselves of being AEW shows rather than always a lot of the times like he's someone who's going to deliver you a cracking main event. That was just brilliant. Like the rolling bloody German suplex on the ramp was just absolutely fucking batshit. Like it was just like Darby Allin. Yeah. I always think I'm bored of him, and then he comes back and has like a cracking match. And I think it's just probably the over familiarity of seeing him around the place. And you kind of go, oh yeah, but he's capable of this kind of stuff, isn't he? He is the kind of thing that makes AEW different. Like to WWE, somebody that small who is that much of a kind of like pushed and relatively protected commodity there as well. So
yeah, they added the match last second. Like this was like the last edition of Dynamite last night, and I was kind of going, just throw another match out there with no Cole Bill. That's not, as much as I want the matches to be better on Dynamite, I don't know if that's a solution to a problem. It absolutely was, because this was the best Takeshita stuff. That's what I'd kind of like to highlight as looked since the Kenny Omega matches. Like was said on the promo last week in the horrendous go home stuff. Not only was there was the multi-man itself bad, some of the logic behind it was terrible, and we're saying on telly that Don Callis has taken all the shine away from Takeshita. It's absolutely a thing that's happened, and a man who beat Kenny Omega twice shouldn't be, flailing away on Rampage and not even in the center of people's thoughts for the 2 months after. That is unforgivable. This is what they should have been doing with Takeshita like this week through. No, we can't face somebody that bumps like Darby Allin every week, but fuck me, did he look like the wrestler we all know he is? Like if Kenny Omega is going to be out for a while and you want like an in-ring ace, I don't think it's too strong to say Takeshita can be that guy. He is that good. He's got definitely an aura about him, like a bit of star quality about him. He should have absolutely pushed on from that. Push on now. More of this. He should be wrestling matches like this every couple of weeks because he's still young. He can still do that, and he can, even if you have to wrap Kenny in cotton wool when he comes back, I think Takeshita you can take a little bit more liberty with. You can put him in there with the Kingo and people like that, and do a match like do a couple of. I want to see him. That's for me. What's the match I want to see next? Another match with Darby. I want to see him fucking. This is like I think Wade Singer called it Awesome Tanaka for modern wrestling. Don't know if I go that far, but it had a similar-ish dynamic in that it was one man basically chucking another man around who's willing to bump for them. But it had the added element of Takeshita being a 5-star first class in-ring performer, and just I want to see more of this. I want to see it every week, and I want to see him focused on. And you can make stars and you can make characters and you can do pushes with in-ring wrestling. And if Takeshita was in a prominent spot on Dynamite every week doing this, like that is the best possible use you can do for him. Less of him standing behind Don Callis, stacking up all the heat. More of this. It's fucking brilliant. Can't say enough how much I enjoyed it. It was a 4.5-star match, I would probably say, on a Dynamite, and just one that shouldn't have, but caught me massively by surprise.
See, this was one of the things. Yeah, it completely took me by surprise. I mean, I'd actually tell a lie. I'd seen that there was like a lot of kind of comment about how good this was. So I was like, oh, okay, but I didn't kind of expect this. And I think it was just the fact that what's the best use of them? It's Takeshita in the ring, having no one else effectively around him just having the match, Callis on commentary. Like that was like the best, like bigging him up, basically saying, it's almost in a sense like he doesn't need me at ringside. He's that good. But like, you know, and that's the best presentation. And these are the things you want to see in reset shows, is you want to see, okay, there's now a reason for me to kind of, you go, okay, we're trying to gain some of the momentum and gain some of the traction back in there as well. And that for me is kind of what, like you say, what you want to see there as well. So yeah, that was a hell of a lot of fun. And like you say, now I'm thinking back in it, I'm like going, was it better than Danielson and Okada? It's like, I think I enjoyed it a lot more. Like I have to say that.
What it was, yeah.
Yeah. And it wasn't like booked. I didn't think it was like kind of stupid. It just felt like kind of modern. And again, if you want to think of ways for AEW to differentiate itself from WWE, you're not getting that match on Raw or SmackDown. You're not getting that type of match. That's not happening. Like you might, you know, to a degree get something kind of vaguely similar to on a pay-per-view, but they'll be, you know, be very sort of like carefully cushioned, if it makes any sense. So this kind of like raw, dangerous match, it's just like, it's a hell of a lot of fun.
Do it, take it every week. Thought the main event was very strong as well. Daniel Garcia and Swerve, spot on the table aside. Daniel Garcia's been playing too much WWF No Mercy, doing submissions on top of the table. Worked out a lot better in the game than it did in real life for the poor lad. They also had to do, you know, a stand-up comedy spot with a dance between him and Prince Nana that maybe I personally could have done without. But a match itself, very good. Daniel Garcia is someone who, again, I thought it got lost in the news cycle. I thought he was cracking at the presser. So was Swerve, to be fair. Swerve, you know, is one of those people who I think can not completely be in kayfabe, but still have that same star aura in like a real life setting like that. Garcia just being upfront and honest and talking about mental health and, you know, is running AEW so far. Showed a lot of personality, the type of personality I want to see from him, rather than silly dances. And yeah, he's just someone who, like he said on the presser, will benefit from being on TV this much, from being on TV just during the Continental Classic, and just, you know, the positives that come with that value of being on TV itself. Thought he looked great, and yeah, Swerve shows everything that, you know, I was looking at that match card for Dynamite, going, what will be the main event? Of course, it's going to be Swerve, because 2024 is going to be the year of Swerve. I loved, you know, I thought there was a bit of a hole earlier on, Hangman not wanting to go after Adam Cole and the lads at the start of the show, and I had a tweet ready to fire off JP about, oh, here we go, Hangman Page fucking off for a few weeks again, as he always does anytime we feel like we're getting going with Hangman Page once again. But did the old Steve Austin turning up with his suitcase before the main event, and then had a bit of a back and forth with Swerve at the end of the show, which felt like, you know, a hot end to the show here with what was, I think, your feud of the year last year, JP.
Yep. And it felt like we're carrying on that feud, or that's certainly going to be bubbling underneath, which is why you kind of look and you think, okay, what's the best case scenario? And you go, well, ultimately, you can even have Joe having a couple of defenses. No doubt he'll chuck in a January pay-per-view for shits and giggles, because why not? He's Tony Khan, and that's just how he rolls these days. But, you know, the idea of like Joe losing the belt to either one of these two and then the other one coming for them, it's just like, yeah, get me all over it. And it felt like, who do you want to finish the show with? You want to finish with those two. Now, we haven't seen quarter hours or how this kind of necessarily translated, but I think if this is like something you're doing every week, where there is Swerve and Hangman segments and they are kind of around and they realise that effectively the winner of their next match is probably going to be the person to face Joe. And you go, okay, all right, that's interesting. Now, I'd probably say you do it on TV. You might want to make a big deal of this and build up to it. Like, have that. If you're not doing a pay-per-view, have it at the end of January, but start almost plugging it now. Like, what is the big dynamite you want to get to before you want to go to Revolution? And you can have this as well. And he's already made mention of like Samoa Joe and everything else, and it's not connected to the devil. So it feels like so much more better and realistic. And, you know, and I think when we spoke about the Continental Classic, I think the bigger point about it is it's a presentation of sports-based wrestling. And it's a thing that works. Why? Because sports works. You know, these kind of narratives. There's a new show on Netflix called Captains of the World. And what is it doing? Telling you all these multitude of narratives that are in and around the World Cup and the rest of it. So you're interested, and as each one kind of goes, it's just like it's simple. It's the most simplest of storytellings, but you've got this kind of like this feud with them, which is a proper like kind of blood feud, and you've got other good characters evolved around the perimeter of this, like a John Moxley and whoever you think, okay, you can kind of throw them into it, even Danielson into the mix. Like interesting figures who have all been presented in a serious way, like in the main over these last like couple of weeks, couple of months. And that's the stuff that I kind of want to see, because then it makes me feel like I'm watching a grown-up show rather than overacting and fucking nonsense.
I think the thing with Swerve, the only thing that gives me a little bit of pause, and I think it's probably more of a feature than a flaw, but it's something they should be paying mind to, is he's very much having his cake and eating it too. Like it's like Blackpool Combat Club. My head is spinning on whether he's a face or a heel, because like it does feel soon to go back to this Hangman feud, as hot as it is, because we're in a weird spot now, because we went from Swerve doing the home invasion and then blowing through and beating the shit out of, and basically hanging our biggest babyface at the time in Hangman Page, to pretty much from the night after and for this last 6 weeks being a babyface in the Continental Classic, because he worked pretty much exclusively against heels. And now, if Hangman's back, are we switching back to heel? Because on the Dustin match, despite all that babyface placement during the Continental Classic, he was back to being a heel again, flipping off the crowd, not wanting to cheer him. And obviously, in the Keith Lee feud, he's the baddie based on all of their history, and he was the baddie there with Dustin as well. I suppose when someone's hot, and maybe it goes to the Adam Cole argument we've had in the past, it doesn't, maybe in 2023, 24 wrestling, it doesn't matter as much. As if it's working, and it's clearly working. But I do feel a little bit like they're going to have to pick a lane eventually. Like, is he a face? Is he a heel? Is it like Rock in 98, where, 97, 98, where he's rising up the ranks and, he's such an entertaining heel and he just by default becomes a babyface? That's one thing, but his actions on the pay-per-view and on Dynamite maybe think they're not doing that. We're kind of pushing against that tide, and he's still going to be a heel, even if, he's going to get those cheers. I just feel like they need to make a call. Like, is he going to be the top babyface, or is he going to be the top heel? Because it's less it affects him, I think, and it's more, while it may be in a way you could argue it benefits him to he comes across as a bigger star because he's the cool heel that gets cheered. It's going to affect people like Hangman. It's going to affect whoever he's in programs with, and they probably need to decide at some point, or it might be diminishing returns. Don't know what you think on that.
It's interesting. I'm not sure if they do need to pick a lane. I kind of always think with this, as long as my whole thing with this is, as long as he stays true to the character. So for him to inexplicably start kind of acknowledging fans and stuff, I've always like kind of hated. They just decide that people like you, the end, and now you're going to start like kind of loving them all. Kind of like, yeah, like I think in some ways you want him to have always maintaining that distance, because that's kind of what keeps him cool. Is he's distant from the fans, and it's different. We don't often see that, and he has to kind of work to kind of back it up, but that kind of makes him all the more cooler. So as long as you stay around that, like, and I want him to behave like a heel at the minute, because it's working. That's the thing that's working, and I wouldn't change a single aspect of the character at the moment, because that's kind of what's getting you there. And I think you can do that. That's the kind of storytelling I always want in wrestling, and I want to see more complexity in characters, and I want to see AEW do that, because I think that they're the company with the potential to do that. As much, and not everything in these broad strokes, like a lot of the times. Like, it's strange. I was really scared to make the comparison, but you kind of look what WWE do with Roman Reigns, who to a lot of the fans is a face, but he isn't a face. Like, but to a certain, and you can, like, I think that's the way, simply because he behaves how he behaves, and in its own, all right, some of it is quite weird when you think about it in terms of just normal behavior wise, but you can see how Roman Reigns has gotten to be the character that he is. Like, I'm talking about the character of Roman Reigns. It kind of, there is, like, for the most part, you kind of see, it makes sense why he doesn't like the fans, because there's this horrible experience he has when he wanted to be embraced by them and they just fucking rejected him. And in some ways with Swerve, you can have to say, no, fuck it, this is who I am. This is how I behave, and then people will like it. And then it means you can just broaden the scope of it. But I think it creates a much more interesting kind of mix. So you're not like, these are top faces, these are top heels. It's like almost that SmackDown 6 where, like, you've got a core group of characters who are good and are actually all kind of serious.
Yeah, and I think that's the best argument against. Like, I do see your point, and I think the main thing you said there, that the strongest argument is as long as it's all consistent. That's where my misgiving is, where I'm like, has this been thought through? Are they just being undisciplined and they actually don't know? Left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. Is he supposed to be a heel? Is he supposed to be a face? Is he supposed to be this cool in the middle? As long as they're consistent with that, like you say, as long as he's not, kissing babies one day and home invasioning the next day, that's when it kind of becomes a problem. But it's just, for me, maybe it's by design on his part, but on the company's part, I'm not as willing to give the benefit of the doubt. It feels to me a little bit messy and undisciplined, and that maybe they didn't really think through how the Continental Classic was going to go. But I'm willing to defer. I'm enjoying it, and he's a hot hand, isn't he? So again, I suppose the argument is to go with the hot hand, but maybe something to watch going forward with him. But yeah, past that, any other Dynamite thoughts? I suppose we should move on from AEW without talking the women's division. We didn't get to say these on Dynamite as we thought we might earlier in the week, but tell you what, it was actually a strong Dynamite for the women's division for once. Mariah May had a cracking debut. Deonna Purrazzo, which we all should have put together considering it was in Newark. I don't think anybody made that call considering the rumors were in the air about possibly going to AEW, that she might come as soon as this week's Dynamite. But yeah, both looking strong, both feel like a good boost to the women's division. And if Mercedes is following next week, feel like I've been saying that for 9 months to a year. Actually, at this point, it was last year's WrestleKingdom, wasn't it, when we started the speculation station on Mercedes and AEW. Yeah, that's great pick up in Deonna Purrazzo, and I think a great start for Mariah May on this week's Dynamite.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's interesting you're putting these two together so early because somebody has to lose. And I think in some ways you kind of need Mariah May to be the one that loses probably here. That would be the thing. She had to show off
immediately after winning a debut match. I didn't like that. It was like, well, they have to be the same week. Surely we could have had a bit of longer term. That's what it's all about, discipline, a bit of longer term plan. And she gets a week where she debuts and looks strong, and then it's another week where she has to show ass for the new woman coming in.
But the Purrazzo pickup, longer term, is a good pickup, used correctly, and should be used correctly. Not like Taya Valkyrie, like not in that way whatsoever. And in some ways, I'm glad it's not coming in and just making her a kind of a challenger of the week. You need to establish her. I think she was really surprised by the reaction, but particularly she from home. But you've got to think the crowd she wrestles in front of, for Impact, are not going to be. They're not big. Like as much as we bemoan AEW attendance figures, they're bigger than TNA's and Impacts have been over the last few years. So in some ways I was thought in her promo she was kind of almost breaking up. She was clearly like quite emotional about it as well. But it's a good pickup. As with everything that involves the women's division in AEW, now I'm just incredibly cautious about what they do. But the idea is that she has to get through Mariah May in order to get to Toni Storm, then it's like, oh, okay, then there's that. If you throw Mercedes Moné into the mix, the only thing I would say is that would then completely feel like it would overshadow Deonna Purrazzo in some ways. Do you hold fire on that now for a few weeks, or if it's happened, it seems to feel like it's something that's happened and it's signed, but I almost think you kind of want to hang fire with this for the time being. But Mariah May's clearly massively improved from her time in Stardom as well. She's not the greatest wrestler in the world, but she's clearly massively improved, and there's scope for growth, and she's comfortable being on TV, which you can't say that for a lot of I was thinking of Abaddon, for example. I'm just thinking that's someone with an indie gimmick who shouldn't be anywhere near TV. You do that on indie shows, fine, that works. You do it on GCW, fine, fine, probably do fucking great there.
There was clearly some executive somewhere, wasn't there? It was just more of that, more spooky. Give me the weird girl. Thank God. Hopefully that cycle's over and that paper.
Or they just put on Fight Forever, and it was the first character that appeared on there. So.
You know what? Probably that's probably exactly what happens. I will say as well, before it gets lost there, that Queen Aminata looked great. In defeat to Mariah May as well. It was a little bit I always remember. I always go back to when Val Venus debuted on Raw, and they put him in against Too Cold Scorpio. And like probably no one else remembers this, but like Two Cold Scorpio looked twice the wrestler of Val Venis in that match. His big finish was a splash after Two Cold Scorpio had done like 3 much better splashes in the same match. There was a moment where it was feeling a bit like that, which might be actually, because Mariah May's strength in this match was strikes and stuff, but she was, giving as good as she got. But in the end, it worked out, and it ended up being a good showing for both of them. I'd take a bit more of her on Dynamite going forward. She wouldn't be bad for a bit of depth in the division too. So yeah, I'd give that praise too. But yeah, to be honest, the type of pickup they should do, they should have that. It's here and Jordan Grace are always the default ones, aren't we go to with who's available and who they could theoretically bring in to bolster things. And yeah, with the litany of people you would expect to be coming back in the near future, Jamie Hayter's going to be back at some point, and yeah, we're getting vignettes and all kinds. To Thunder Rosa coming back too, and there's hopefully a stronger women's division in there somewhere. But like you said, mate, we've said this a few times. But yeah, any other thoughts on that, on Dynamite as a whole, AEW as a whole?
I'm trying to think of like any other kind of like big thoughts from them necessarily, but I think that's pretty much like, let's see what happens with Collision and Rampage, which I mean, I don't know. I was watching the TBS feed, and one of the things that I saw is that Rampage seemed to have new music, which I didn't know. I just thought of you instantly and thought like maybe you'll be spared that kind of Rampage theme, and maybe they're changing it up for the new year. Fingers fucking crossed on that. Again, I won't hold my breath for that to happen as well. But if that's going to be the case there. But I thought as a research show from a creative perspective, it did the things it needed to do. What's been stuff that's worked in recent weeks is kind of serious matches, and I know the ratings down, and you've got it up on screen here for the video viewers of 801,000 and a 0.26 in the old. There's some weekend show references there, but like I think again, think of the stars, people who weren't there. Like obviously there's no Moxley, there's no Danielson, in some ways it's, you're trying to get people in, and it's going to be difficult, I suppose, like thinking the time of year as well, and people going to be back to work yet or doing other stuff kind of like post New Year's. It's still very early on, so it's not the worst, but from a creative perspective, they did some of the stuff they needed to do, even if it meant bringing the bloody devil storyline to an end. But like you say, we are going to end up having follow-up on that in the following week. So definitely.
Well, on that note, while we're kind of talking ratings, I'll blow. Obviously, New Japan WrestleKingdom is the other A story to talk about today. But as a quick B story, I'll blow through the little bits of WWE notes we've got. It won't be long for the WWE haters out there, but it does bear repeating. We were expecting JP to lead the show today with Triple H's big announcement, which is, unless he's got something under, if he's either gone full Tony Khan, positive or negative here, unless he's got like a secret second announcement he's going to be announcing tonight. We believe the big Triple H announcement at time of recording is Money in the Bank coming from Toronto next year, which is a decent size announcement. July 57. They're pairing it with NXT again, so we're back to doing that again, which is the way things always should have been. Sell a package deal like that. Toronto has a SmackDown on a Friday, Money in the Bank on the Saturday, and then the big NXT show Heatwave apparently in July. So they're borrowing from ECW now as well as WCW. Reasonable size announcement in its own mind. But more of that. That's what they should be doing, as we said. This year, the big part of WWE's pay-per-view calendar has been those international shows.
They're also making noises on the tie-up with UFC for the big weekenders. Yeah, that's the other kind of thing they want to do. But this is what happens, I think, with a Triple H run WWE. What are the things that are the most common sense things to do? It's a hot ticket. It'll sell out Money in the Bank, and Heatwave will do a really good like kind of push. And you'd imagine it'd have been on would it have been on CW at that point? Would he be on there at that stage? So with the new deal. It'll be interesting to see what happens in terms of like how much CW push it, and you can see them definitely doing that. But these are the kind of smart, common sense things that they do, and like each of these shows being a big deal. It's a shame that it didn't come back to London. Just so, if nothing else, Matty could have come back. God help him if they ran Liverpool for a fucking PLE.
Toronto, we could go out there, see John and Way, see the rest. That's Braden and Davey. They were great on Ash Grapple as well. So
WH going to NXT. There's a show I want to listen to.
Oh, but he's not the only one. Yeah, apparently. So we say we're giving AEW excuses there with their number this week, but NXT this week. The other quick news note: 768,000 viewers and a 0.25 in the 1849. 30% on the obviously the tape one the week before, but big spike, big mark, the highest 1849 since that Super Tuesday when Matty was waving his NXT flag and NXT shirt, and they're not actually putting a lot of effort into it with the move over to CW coming. So yeah, that's a positive story. And the last quick one from WWE that I think we do need to mention as follow up to the news update is, wouldn't you know it, JP? Dwayne The Rock Johnson is a draw, as Raw also had its largest audience since November. It was on that 27th of November show. I'll tell you in a minute. The day one Raw had 1.751 million viewers and 797,000 in the 1849. The Rose Bowl was on, and obviously we got a lot going on. Real sports competition, and coming off the back of a best of, and yes, it is the Raw's largest audience since CM Punk and Randy Orton. He does deserve some credit, came in, but I think the biggest headline of it was looking at the quarter hour between The Rock and Jinder Mahal, as it went up to 2.15 million viewers and over a million in 1849. It dropped the graphics hilarious. If you're a Patreon subscriber to WrestleNomics, it just craters into the next, because I think the other negative, the negative was, as much as Rock drew that audience, thought the segment fucking stunk, and it felt like nobody stuck around once it was over. But it was a comically large quarter hour, and it tells you why speculation is so rife that they're probably going to do Rock and Roman at WrestleMania, if not in Australia. But yeah, Dwayne still got it. JP is the headline there.
Oh, it is, isn't it? And it's like, well, it's not Jinder Mahal. I would pretty much safely assume that's not the wow. In which case, put the fucking strap on him. Like, he's drawing fucking. He's one Bill Jinder doesn't quite work, does it? Like,
one Bill Dwayne, two Bill Dwayne,
two Bill Dwayne. But like they're going to be doing it. We spoke about it on the New Year News show. I mean, if he's drawing those kind of numbers as well, and he's wanting to look kind of hot again as a kind of personality rather than sort of an actor going through the kind of motions as well. So maybe a bit of wrestling and portraying Mark Coleman in the Smashing Machine are the things to kind of revitalise him for us to take him seriously all over again. But yeah, although we spoke about like the kind of complications that this leads to potentially for Mania. So it'd be one of these kind of like wait and see. Is he going to be appearing back? Because you're going to end up in a situation where you've got him, Punk, Cody, or probably Roman at some stage appearing like in the build up to Mania and stuff. Like, there's going to be some bit like, and this is the thing.
Throw his name in there.
Possibly fucking Austin, if they ever went with that as well. I mean, like, this is the thing. Like,
it's an embarrassment of riches right now.
It is an embarrassment of riches that they've got, and it's a very kind of rude. It's a healthy company from those perspective. In the kind of bigger picture stuff. Like you mentioned about NXT, I think some of that stuff is that people are kind of into the Trick Williams, Carmelo Hayes storyline, and they didn't give a shit that it was like bait and switch, and they didn't have the match with Ilya Dragunov they were going to do. And it does make you think. It's like, okay, they've really got their kind of like, they're getting their shit together, aren't they? Like, in so many ways, which is why our hyper criticism of AEW kind of comes into it. It's like, because that's what you're up against. Like, this is all of these stories suggest that there's a level of competency from that company, and they've got star power as well to kind of back it up.
If they manage to stick this landing with doing this match, somehow letting Cody finish his story, which I'm in more doubt than I've ever been on it. Matty wins either way, as long as Roman main events WrestleMania. I'm sure we'll be chatting it more. Obviously, not for today's show, but there'll definitely be another Grapple Civil War as we talk the merits of Roman having had this title all this time, and if it isn't going to end with a Cody win. I saw Matty saying on the Discord he thinks he's going to break the Hogan record, which is a terrifying thought. If that's where we're going. But yeah, right now I'm not as confident as I would have been, in fairness, this time last year with Vince McMahon shaped specter around things that they'd fuck it. I just don't really know how they're going to thread that needle right now. And to be fair, with how Rock looked in that segment on Raw, lad doesn't look like he can go more than 5 minutes. Imagine him trying to do a 30-minute monologue epic with Roman Reigns. We'll see if he's got the gas in the tank to get there. Maybe they've got something else up the sleeve. But we'll talk more of that probably in the coming weeks with Spotlight, and probably most likely on next Tuesday's Spotlight. But in the meantime, JP, yeah, we should get to our other A story of the week, which is the little matter of this morning's Wrestle Kingdom, JP, which January 4th used to be one of the big days of the year for me and you, as we mentioned earlier. We both managed to catch it in at various times of the day today and watch it through. I've got to say, we didn't even do a full preview for Wrestle Kingdom again with the hectic schedule over the last few days. It just didn't turn out possible for us to do this year, but I don't know what I really would have said. Yeah, not looking forward to that. Not looking forward to that. Not excited about that. Oh, that'll probably be good on the night. My level of expectation was lower than ever, and that might be a lot to do with the main event of Wrestle Kingdom from today. I didn't come out with any real different perspective on that. But I suppose while we're talking numbers and business, it did slightly up as far as attendance goes for New Japan this year. 27,422, roughly about 1,000 more than last year, which I don't know is that impressive. It's basically flat, really, I would say, when you're talking numbers that big. And yeah, there's obviously all of the other we forget. Last year's Wrestle Kingdom, we were still talking about clap crowds. We were still talking about like half full venues and things like that. It was still a conversation piece back then. There was still, not as much travel. I definitely saw myself, a lot of people I follow on Twitter and, listeners over in Japan for this. So, it felt like the first year where people felt comfortable that they could do that again. Hope Matt out there is having a great time. But yeah, I think with all those things said, I think maybe the attendance pretty much being flat with last year tells you, I don't know if as much as it was over in the building, and as much as Naito is, I would say, as much as we're bored of him, a gigantic star to the people in those buildings. I don't necessarily think you can say he's a fault there. I think it's just maybe a lukewarm interest in Sonada or a lukewarm interest in the overall product that means it was not the most impressive number for the show today.
Yeah, I mean, I think as well, it's probably a better number than what they would have done. The fact it's on a Thursday. Now, I know next year's on a Saturday, and I've seen all the various machinations brought up. Do they do a 2-day one because they can do Saturday, Sunday? There's that part of the deal in there, and but if you look at the peak, like what was within recent New Japan and like the kind of the boom period or the end boom period, you had 38,162 in 2019. Night 1 on 2020 did just over 40,000, and night 2 did 30,363. So near 75,000 over the 2 days. We're not at those levels yet, and I'm not entirely convinced that they're going to get back to those levels in there, because in many ways, like I suppose, rather like there's a similarity between this and World's End. Just the fact that it felt like, okay, they're bringing some stuff to an end, thank God. And they've got these younger elements, and are they going to be going with them? And in many ways, I thought, I'm not entirely sure of that. Whereas at least with AEW, you had a Dynamite to kind of go, okay, where we are. And we should say at time of recording, unless New Year's Dash breaks from what it has been in recent years, which is just a pointless kind of, let's have a load of multi-mans.
A few times, haven't we?
We have.
Let's make the New Year's Dash before we record. You might teach us a lesson this year, JP.
Might do, but what do I think will happen? Evil and Dick Togo versus Sonada and Naito, which I could give less of a shit about.
Danielson might do something fun.
Danielson might, but it'll be a kind of like more of a not a testimonial appearance. What's the right word? Like an exhibition match, like type thing, rather than a kind of like a big Wrestle Kingdom match. So, like it could be, but I think the era of turning on bloody AJ Styles and stuff like that, we are well away from all of that kind of stuff at this stage. So, like I just think I watch it. There are bits to it where I go, I kind of like this person. I kind of like this person. Are they resetting? But I'm not convinced that the booking's listening in many ways. And I think like watching that main event, which just to me, just didn't feel like it wasn't the main event to us. That crowd fucking loved Naito, and you can't get away from it. That's what they wanted to see. They wanted to see that. They wanted to see the roll call, even as much as we don't give a shit about it. But ultimately, you're putting the title on someone who is really broken down, not to Tanahashi levels, but they're broken down. And they're a hard person to go with as a kind of champion, and you've got all of these younger wrestlers. So you want to see them go in a different direction away from these people, and then it's all like Evil getting involved at the end, and I just put my head in my hands. I was like, what the fuck? Like, really? And it was a kind of a bait and switch, but it was all very pointless. You could have just had the moment with Sanada and Naito, and it's interesting. He showed more emotion crying on the way back than we have seen in years. And I joked in the Discord that he should have come out to enjoy the silence by Depeche Mode.
Oh, it was embarrassing, the level of response Naito got compared to him. Even, I know Naito's the face in the story, but still tells you where Sanada is.
Yeah.
I just want to say before it goes, it got carried in the chat with Noah. Best than anybody talking about how, she expects the numbers to be up next year's WrestleKingdom being back on a weekend. That showed in that pattern as well, where 2020, when we had a Saturday, Sunday one, as you said, they did the 2 nights and it was 40,000 and 30,000. So, yeah, while we're still down on the quote-unquote peak in 2018 and 2019 for weekdays, almost 40,000 on a Friday in 2019. Shows you where we were at that point. Yeah, she's saying there, there's a lot of domestic out of towners who come into Tokyo, so probably expect a lot more of that next year. But yeah, I suppose the only place to start is the main event. We'll get into the real main event in a minute, JP. But a lot of the reason the people who were there were to see Naito complete his story. And like you said there, I mean, the roll call felt a little bit, overplayed. It was like watching it, like you said just then as well. Discord was a massive, massive positive this year for watching this show. Just going back and forth with everybody and chatting on the show. Had a fantastic time for us in the UK in the morning. It was probably the most busy we've had for a live show. Made it a lot more bearable. We needed something like that to get through the 35 minutes of this main event, but I really didn't understand the roll call. Like, it was kind of like, I just assumed the rest of LIJ would come out, and they didn't, and it was just Naito saying his line. It was all laugh for that, really. Okay, fair enough. There's clearly people who are more invested in that story than I am, but yeah, I would say, as well as the numbers we're talking about there, I don't think the match itself and the performance has really changed many minds on Sanada, and I think the great Sanada experiment is over for a reason. Whether Naito's run will be particularly long is another question, but yeah, the sickos got what they want, JP. It just very much wasn't for me. It was extremely boring, 3.5 star, 35 minutes for me, and that's not what I personally want out of we can see, obviously, t-shirts sold and, reaction in the building, shows why they wanted to finish the story with Naito, but to be honest, not for me.
No, not for me at all. Never will be for me. Never was for me. He was a kind of a bust as a champion. We joked about the Muta interview on the New Year's News show, but bloody hellfire. Just, I couldn't care. But it's also, where do you go from here? And it just felt like even the end of the show felt like, we can extend it a little bit more and a little bit more. And it's like, please stop this.
I think please. You're going to do that, though, with Evil. Like, that was as good as you could execute it.
Yeah.
Like, I will say that, like, him coming out and it being, a tease and allowing Sanada to save a bit of face and make the big save was good for him. If you're interested in protecting Sanada, that was good. That was good for him. It was a good moment for the long term lore of it, and again the reaction of it, because you can't. Again, the other thing, as much as I didn't enjoy the match, they bit on all the near falls, as sloppy as some of them were. They bit on them, and they were loud for them, and they were even louder for the, Sanada saving Naito at the end and chasing off Evil. Like you say, though, the follow-up does mean probably tag matches involving Evil and singles matches involving Evil, which I don't necessarily want to see. But I do think the execution of it deserves some positive talk, because it was strong.
It's just, it involves him, and he, for me, is symptomatic of where kind of New Japan really fell off in terms of, like, particularly like main event quality. And trust me, he's had iffy moments at times before that. It hasn't all been perfect, but, like, I get the reason why, but it feels like, okay, this might just be the peak of it. Like, we're not at, like, kind of 2020 numbers. are we, for this as well? Like, we are really at the peak of what we're going to be able to do with Naito, and they have got this kind of like younger generation of wrestlers who were weirdly booked at points in this show. And I kind of thought, well, I'm not quite sure what's going on here. And they're the things that make me worry. Like, I just thought, you know, ultimately a good New Japan and a strong New Japan is really good for wrestling, because they offer that kind of alternative off-ramp as well, and what you'd like to think of as like a kind of a different level of presentation. And the fact that they've got these connections with the West it's always like kind of like a really good thing to kind of hang your hat on. But like, yeah, I was just, again, rather like the Devil's storyline, another similarity, I was just glad it was over at the end, because I just thought, that's 25 minutes I'm not quite getting back. And thank God for the Discord, because they made that time go quicker, because I could easily just sort of have a laugh at something there, particularly at the end when they were just shit in the bed with like, and they just ended up holding each other in the ring for a bit, like towards the end of it. And it didn't even look good in that. They're both believably knackered, didn't they? I was like, oh, here we go.
Sounds like Ghetto was texting you in the background there. Stop slagging us off.
It isn't me. Lads' phones.
Andy asks what match was the Greg's week. It would have been the main event, but it was the main event. So it was too late in the day, so I didn't actually get it. That makes it even more historic. I didn't get a Greg's run in on this year's Wrestle Kingdom. And again, Karen, voice of reason of people more invested than us in New Japan. Yet obviously, Naito mentioning Evil and Sanada in the roll call makes it historic for that story. But yeah, can't say me and JP unfortunately are invested in that story whatsoever, or could possibly be invested in anything that involved Sanada. So yeah, that didn't give me much reason to pay more attention than we have to New Japan JP. But as rough as that was, I did think Bryan and Okada really lived up to the billing. I've said it to a few people now, like, what do I need to see from Wrestle Kingdom? There are other matches we can reference, and depending on, your exhaustion level with Hiromu in the junior division, or, how many times you've seen Zack and Tana go back at it, and really your aptitude for seeing what was genuinely a good Tama Tonga match with Shingo. The thing you need to see from the show, if you haven't already, is absolutely Bryan and Okada, because I felt like they really put the bad taste in a lot of people's mouths we had from the first match out of it. And I think, yes, the injury hurt things at Forbidden Door, and that was almost the excuse you could hang your hat on. And once we knew the real life story, we were all very like, wow, I can't believe Bryan even finished that match. So God bless him. Maybe in a rematch we'll get something more like what we would picture a Bryan Okada match being in our heads prior to them beating there. I feel like we got it here for Wrestle Kingdom. It felt like, obviously, it's the big spectacle and occasion of Wrestle Kingdom. That wasn't lost on Bryan. You could tell he was loving being back out there. Not for the first time. Thank you, shite commentary, but we'll get into the commentary in a minute. But, being there as this version of himself obviously was a massive deal for him. Okada had the big entrance at first. I'd gone out to get a fresh coffee, came back and it looked like Okada was getting a stand-up tan. I didn't fully understand what his entrance was until I watched it back and realised going from like to colour. And blame the colours on my projector. Maybe I couldn't tell first time either, but that was special. And then they went out there and had a really, really strong match, like by head and shoulders the best match on the show, and something a lot more like the dream match this was advertised as at Forbidden Door. JP,
I would be in complete agreement with that. I mean, apart from the bit where it looked like he was having his arse photocopied on the entranceway, like it did. That's what it looked like. I was like, all right, well, he is on the way out. Maybe that's exactly the kind of thing that he'll end up doing in either the New Japan or TV Asahi headquarters on the way out. It's just, yep, photocopy of me arse. This is what I'll do as I go off to meet Barry Bloom and then sign with someone for millions. But this felt like proper Wrestle Kingdom. Like, it really did. Like, it was like you do big kind of like dream matches there, and this one was proper, and it didn't have the injury there as well, and it was just like there was a wonderful level of viciousness to it as well, which, like, Danielson really brought. And it was the fact that he felt like he was on the same level as Okada in there at the same time. It was like, this is like a proper big match. And I really, like, I love this a lot more. I mean, I thought it was like an easy match of the night as well. Ratings wise, I was thinking about this. I was kind of like between 4.25 and 4.5. And there's a part of me thinks I need to see it again, perhaps not after kind of getting up and trying to deal with Charlie and the rest of it at a couple of points. I sure had to change a shitty nappy at this stage during the show as well. But it was the one thing that felt like kind of classic WrestleKingdom that you could kind of hang your hat on. And then it made you wonder, well, what happens now after this? It's like you've had this match, it's 1-1, but then is Okada off? You know, at that stage, is Danielson going to be more in around kind of New Japan? Because you've got to think, if he's talking about his last year of active wrestling, he's going to want to do a G1, which feels like the kind of logical place after today to kind of bring him back, if not for an angle maybe at the start of it, if you're going to do something with him. But yeah, this was like a proper Wrestle Kingdom match between two big stars, and the crowd fucking with it as well.
I've watched it twice now. I think it was funny the first time out. I kind of felt like, oh, did that finish kind of come a bit out of nowhere? Was it because you say proper Wrestle Kingdom match? We're just conditioned to expect Okada to go another 10 after the point where this match ended and hit another couple of rainmakers. And I think the commentary didn't help. I'm circling the drain of when I'm going to bury the commentary. There was definitely, it didn't feel like the commentary thought it was the finish. When you listen to it back, they're kind of talking up like, oh, did he get all of it? Or, we're taking a card a couple of seconds to get the pin. Like, you could tell they thought there was another stretch to go. But rewatching it just as a finite match, it was better for it. It goes back to what I was saying on must-see matches when we were talking the beauty of Joe Kobashi, that it didn't go another 10, and the beauty of, great matches before, all our brains got rotted and we all expected an extra 15 minutes worth of outs at the end of a match. That was where I think maybe in the backstage discussion of how this match would go, Brian probably won the conversation over Okada, because I think that was its strength. It didn't outstay its welcome. And it made sense as well. You had the earlier Rainmaker out of just pure desperation out of Okada. You had the sheer brutality of Danielson going after the arm himself and telling the ref to tell him that he was going to break his fucking arm, and all of those spots in there, like the sinister kind of evil Brian that you get from time to time. It was like flipping on its head what happened in the last match. Thought that was really strong, and just in general, it was so heated. The crowd clearly knew Brian's stuff, including the yes chant, which was, as much as he's led one of them, really, since it felt like a good social experiment. Will they go along with it? They absolutely did. That was a great moment in the match as well. It was just a really compact, tight war of a match. I'd probably go 4.5 to 4.75 in it, so maybe it does edge out the Dynamite match when we're talking star ratings. I wouldn't go full 5, but I really thought it was everything it needed to be, and it really wiped out again the bad taste in its mouth that the previous one did. And it, unlike the last match, it made me go, you know what, actually I do want to see this again. Maybe that was part of the reason I wasn't super excited for this show, because I wasn't super excited for the the reality of Brian and Okada again. But it turned out this was what they could actually do, and take it on another big stage at some point.
They could do, whether they do it in the same company. I mean, that's the issue, isn't it, with the Okada kind of contract? Yeah,
don't know, man. No, that's another. We haven't never covered that, did we? I meant to cover it on the news show. Tanahashi is now the man in charge. He'll have a word. He'll talk him into it. Tanahashi McMahon, Hiroshi, Vince Tanahashi. He'll probably not a great comparison.
We are hanging on.
Let's say that.
Tanakan. Again, another show title contender there. It's an interesting one, because I think we're holding a lot of hope that Tanahashi kind of sees wrestling in quite almost like a more simple way. Just thinking, no, this is what kind of got us out of the real doldrums. These were the simple things we did. This is the way we kind of booked champions, and we decided to do things in a kind of like just a more simple, logical way. And like there's a lot of expectation there, and we don't know the dynamics between, like, in terms of, does he override Gedo in terms of booking or anything else along those lines? I mean, you just think to yourself, he's probably, if you're going to pick a wrestler, he is the one you go with it. I mean, I wouldn't be scared by the fact he took the TV title off Zack Sabre Jr. because that just suggested to me actually that Zack Sabre Jr. has gone as far as he. Do you know what I did? I love that match, but I think it's that TV title. It's the 15 minutes. It's the fact that what you're going to be getting is you're not going to be getting a Tanahashi match where he's just being forced to kind of sell for too long, and you think we've been down that road like with him so many times, and instead, you get the belt off Zack Sabre Jr., who then you can actually start to push towards like that main event and as a challenger. And it wouldn't surprise me as him being ultimately the replacement for Ospreay of someone that they're gonna put in there and go with for the next couple of years. So I'm bullish, but we need to see how this kind of like plays out in terms of the dynamics of New Japan, what real differences it makes, whether or not he just says, no, we're going to cut down on this House of Torture bullshit. Like, because if he thinks it's all right, then we're fucked. Like, if he's like, yeah, no, this is great stuff, I love it. Like, no, Christ, I'll just put my head in my hands and go, mate, I thought you knew better. But
well, yeah, we'll talk more the undercard in a minute. But yeah, Brian Okada, just to go back to that again, exactly what you wanted. Yeah. If you're watching nothing else from this show, absolutely watch that. Yep. Maybe want to see more Brian in New Japan. Want to see him in his G1, whether that'll really happen. I doubt it. He was talking this week about when he retires, he's going to be doing 5 to 6 matches a year. Still be the wrestler of the year, won't he? That's all I need. Give him the Brock Lesnar schedule, Tony. I'll be fine with it. Or you come round for WrestleKingdom once a year. I'll have that if he's not willing to or able to do a G1 going forward. But yeah, best wrestler in the world for my money. And still overdue that AEW title run. I really feel like they should have done that. They had time, but we probably missed the boat now to go there. But yeah, that was great. And I suppose the other thing we should talk about is Mox, Ospreay, and Finlay. And to get us there, talk about the big news story of WrestleKingdom, JP. We've had some big ones over the years. You talk about what could possibly happen tomorrow and New Year's Dash, but what could possibly happen, mate, is we could get the dream team of the Ziggler brothers out there against Finlay and I don't know, Kenta or somebody. It's it's coming, mate. There's the Nemeth boys. I don't know if have you seen Dolph's video that he's put on YouTube today. His version of the break out of prison promo is to do a zombie movie. It's essentially what he does.
Did he kick his brother's head off, or was that a fever dream?
He did super kick his brother's head off in this video. Gets covered in blood, drinks a bit of zombie blood, which I would probably say is probably not a good idea. Nope. That's his version of the escape route for Nick Nemeth. He's a wanted man. That's what we're told. And yeah, the two lads came out in the as I said on Twitter today, very much that, when you were a kid, it was like, oh, take your brother, will you, with you? Your mum's like, where are you going? You go in the park? Go on, take your brother along with you. That's what happened here. Nick Nemeth and Ryan Nemeth turning up in twosome with Nick in front and his brother sheepishly following along like he's the little brother who's been forced by mum to come out to the park. Even the camera work completely focused on Dolph, completely ignoring Ryan Nemeth, which is the thing to do. But God bless him, he got his brother a little bit of camera time at least. And yeah, Nemeth brothers invade New Japan, JP. Exactly where we all thought we'd see Dolph Ziggler in 2024.
Well, when they first came out, I laughed. Like, naturally enough, I was like, oh, okay. And then I thought about it, and I went, do you know what? Him going into New Japan as a tag wrestler for a tag division I don't really care about anyway, and it's him and his brother, and I go, okay, it could work in its own weird way, establishing it. I was like, that's absolutely fine. And then they did all the fucking Finlay stuff, and I, again, just put my head in my hands, and I went, bollocks. Like, and I'm sure they think, he's going to be a big draw for Battle in the Valley, and it's just like, okay, I remain to be convinced by that. Suit looked good. I say that as someone who recently went to a funeral, and I was like, he looked like he was very much dressed for one, wasn't it? Which is ironic because it would have been his brother who was there with him as well. So unless he was doing some weekend at Bernie's gimmick, kind of keeping him alive. Also, as well, I thought, well, Nick Nemeth will be the pin eater in that tag team. So clearly they're going to do it. It's Ryan even. Is it Ryan? It is Ryan. Yeah, of course.
Ryan's the brother.
Ryan's the brother. I forget. But it's him coming in, challenging Finlay while Moxley and Ospreay are leaving the company, you're like, right, okay, it feels like you've very much traded down here, haven't you? Like, ultimately, for what you're going to end up doing here. Him versus David Finlay for the global heavyweight championship, wherever the fuck it is. Like, I'm just like, oh, okay, I'm not excited by it. I honestly thought, you know, them bringing him in, I don't know what, like, if they think there's going to be some sort of spike in numbers for this. But, I mean, Karen mentioned in the chat he had cracking hair. That was the other thing to take from it. It was like, I don't know what conditioner he used, but it's a fancy one because his hair looked absolutely luscious and golden. But yeah, just, I can't be excited by it. Can't be excited at all. There's a novelty value, and he could easily end up proving me wrong. And he could just prove himself to be like, oh, he looks absolutely fucking brilliant these days. You're putting on the Wanted Man video now for video viewers on here.
We got any idea on this guy?
He doesn't look quite as that's the
Has the policeman got a zombie in the back of the car?
I think the policeman turns out to be a zombie. I think that's what we're going for. The YouTube channel listed on, by the way, is Ryan Nemeth, his brother. They just seem like that, those types of brothers who do everything together, and you know, they always go and get his brother somewhere where he squashes a man's head in a police car door. A
bit like Vinnie Jones in Lock, Stock.
Maybe because that'd be more. That'd be lots more interesting, actually. See him wrestle a match in 2024 for me.
Yeah.
But I actually, you beat me to the point because I think I was going to make that same point with him because I think on reaction I laughed at it and I kind of went, you know, I don't personally want to see the man ever again. And I think there's also that part of us that looks at the peak of New Japan and goes, really, was Dolph Ziggler the missing ingredient? And really, after, you know, 15 to 20 years, however long it was in WWE, you know, putting in just enough effort to get his contract renewed every year, is this going to be the year that he really goes for it and goes for those match of the year ballots? And we get to see him be that wrestler that everyone believed he could have been if Vince McMahon had just believed in him. It's not happening. But I don't want to see him in AEW. I don't necessarily want to see him in New Japan, but as you've alluded to, is it a fresher proposition? It probably is. It is him fish out of water in a completely new scenario. His brother's crap. But if they're going to do tag team stuff, well, I'm not offended by that because what are the other options in the New Japan heavyweight tag team division? Not much going on there. He's very big, clearly, you know, coming off the back of this three-way, been defined at a certain level in things. He's not at the top of the company. If he's working Davey Finlay, it's somewhere towards the middle top. It's not as criminal as it seems on the face of it. Dare I say it, JP? I'm willing to see it play out. I'm willing to see it does have anything to offer at all in a completely fresh environment, in a completely new scenario. Will it pull something out of them that I've never seen in them, that clearly other people have over year on year of crying for him to be pushed? It's not actually the worst landing space from both sides, but we'll see on the New Japan side going forward.
We'll learn very quickly where this goes. Because it doesn't feel like I don't know, maybe he will take the belt off David Finlay straight away and that'll be the feud that they do. I'm not enthusiastic about that part of it, but there is novelty value to this. Definitely right. I mean, that's the main appeal, isn't it? Is novelty. And I'm not sure, but in some ways that's his job now, is to kind of really prove that he really wants to go for it and that he has been shackled. And it's not, as I'm always thinking in my head, well, this is 10 years too late, isn't it? This is literally 10 years too late for like this whole scenario to happen.
Yeah.
And it is, you know, it's the single stuff that I'm not mad about.
Somewhere, you know? That's how long ago it was. You know,
yeah.
It was 3.
Did he do one of those like cushion foam toys, like they used to have for the Rock? Yeah, he'll have one of those if Dolph Ziggler did, Luke. Probably chucking darts at pictures of his head now.
Probably have a Shelton Benjamin as well. But then, yeah, as Simon says here, if you have any faith in Dolph delivering, Philly's probably not the opponent to prove that against Simon. So he has got an uphill battle on his hands, but. Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just my lack of interest in New Japan in general. I'm like, yeah, you lads take him. I probably won't watch it except for the big shows, and I'll tune in and see how he does on it. Saying that as a curiosity thing on a periodic basis, I'll I want to see what he looks like. But yeah, it did, like you say, that was my first. It's probably not good that my first reaction was just to laugh at it. But again, the second logical part of my brain probably thought, okay, well, we'll see where we go with this. But yeah, it was a nice distraction from the other goings on around this match. As I kind of thought this was a bit of a letdown. Moxley, Ospreay, and Dave Finlay. Like, you had Ospreay in the promos leading up to it, and in the New Japan presser, outright saying this should have been a singles match between me and Mox. And yes, I agree, Will. I think we all think that. Presumably, with Mox not being, full-time New Japan, and obviously Ospreay not being full-time New Japan going forward, they just wanted to get the belt over to one of their guys. And God love him, a copy of a Gedo loves himself a copy of a copy of a copy, because that's exactly what Switchblade Dave Finlay is at this point, and he's their guy, and they want Shillelagh and all. They wanted to get the belt over to him, but I do think he was. The match ended up being a 3.5 to 3.75 star range match. When we all know if it was Ospreay Mox, and it was at this point in the card, this would potentially been another contender. Although there were, as we can get into, a couple of moments in the match that did make me smile, regardless.
Yeah. And that was the thing about it. At the time when I watched it, I was like, okay, it's kind of enjoyable enough. But what did I really want? I wanted Ospreay versus Moxley. You could have done the title change the next night, New Year's Dash. That's what they used. That's what old New Japan of the 2014 to 2018. That's what they would have done. That's exactly what they would have done. They would have gone, no, we're going to get the belt onto him. We're going to do it the next night, and he's going to get the kind of like shine to himself. Instead, it was just like, when watching the match, it was like waiting for ways of David Finlay kind of disappearing, and then going, oh, good. Like, there was the point, literally, Ospreay went to Moxley, just pointed to the ring and went, have a wrestle. And they did. And they went in, and it was great. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm kind of like game for this stuff. And then they'd be kind of overshadowed, as they kind of were, for when like the War Dogs ran out and the rest of it. And Alex Coughlin looked like he'd woken up pissed in a bath. But instead he was at a table, sat stage. It was just like, he had that same face on him of just like, gee, like that you would have had when you were a student, and you just, what I've had before. I just woke up in a bath, and I was like, what the fuck? Do you know what it did? It was a bank holiday, and it was doing drinking games to the last day of the Championship League season, where we'd pick teams, and if goals went in against them, you had to drink, while simultaneously having another drinking game that was the Royal Rumble video game, but just computers. And we had certain numbers, and if they got chucked out, you had to drink. It was just like a horrific state of affairs. I had a crippler crossface put on me that day. So I'm channeling my inner Joe here as well. And I woke up in a bath, and there's several hours. And I remember seeing one of our neighbours who's just like looked at it, and he's like, you seem like you're in a bad way. And I was like, oh Christ, like I have no recollection of it. But anyway, I died. That's what I should have been.
I pissed myself though. You're right, because the interference was a net negative for the match. Like, it proper derailed the momentum of things, and it was very, if things are going to change with Tanahashi in charge, this felt like, what we've come to expect from Gedo's booking of heels at this point. But like that visual of him stuck in, you couldn't have planned that. You could not have done that on purpose. Like, there's no way he could land so perfectly in the hole of the table and the table to stay upright. Like, it was an amazing moment. Like, there were two notable reactions during this match, because I meant to mention it then. When the Ziggler brothers come out, there was a bit of a murmuring, to be fair. Now, I've seen some live reports that have said that a lot of it was people going, who's that? But there was a reaction. Same thing happened when the camera zoomed in on him on the table, and the whole of Tokyo Dome got that shot. Like, the reaction was priceless, because everyone had the same one and pissed themselves. It was unintentional comedy, and maybe it's detracted from the match as a whole. But fuck me, that will be in the show images, like, spoilers, 100%. Like, just that's gonna be like, go down in the annals of time. Now he's never gonna escape that happened. Somehow. He landed there perfectly, like he was pissed in a bath, like a young JP. Just oh, amazing.
Yeah, it was. But again, there was a way of booking this match. Sorry, I always worry about going into kind of like, what kind of like alternative booking for it as well. But you could have had this match without the interference, which was basically Dave Finlay deciding that you know, he's going to be the sneakier, cleverer guy and let these two guys kind of like wear themselves out at points and only get involved intermittently in order to kind of break up that dynamic. There was a way of doing this match. They just didn't do it. And by the end, when I'm thinking of Alex Coughlin and I'm not thinking of Jon Moxley or Will Ospreay, I kind of go, oh, okay, I'm really not sure about this. And then I'm thinking about Dolph Ziggler afterwards. And I go, two of the best wrestlers in the world were also involved in this match, but they're not like near what I'm thinking of. And one of them has been like a legend for the company and is on his way out. And it's just like not thinking about him.
It depends how much he's around, though. Like it's Ospreay, I never believe him when he said he's leaving anywhere. He'll be around next year, I presume. Well, maybe this gives an indication it might not be as much as we thought. I will say I love Mox in Japan. Like I do. I'm almost scared to say it. Don't tell the Eagles don't hunt flies, lads. That I generally always feel like I'm on the outside looking in when it comes to Moxley. Like I understand why you all like him. I understand that he's one of the best in the world. I just don't always necessarily feel it or feel strongly about it. I suppose the way, like we said on the Grappies last year when you were all voting him Wrestler of the Year, I could see the logical argument for it. I just didn't feel it myself. Just something about him maybe that just didn't fully appeal to me all the time. But I think it is a me problem. I'll accept that. I never feel like that in Japan. Like there's something about Moxley in Japan. Even with the stupid red mask, which was daft, like he just comes across so fucking cool, and it is that brawler again, fish out of water, who's in Japan, who brings back memories of the Gaijin of the past. He's just amazing there, and I want to see more of him in New Japan. Like if he was, I'm sure he wants to as well. So presumably we will see more of him going forward there in Japan as well. It just feels like a different character altogether. He feels a bit more focused in Japan. There isn't that flip flopping that necessarily you get in the US with him. He is what he is, and he seems motivated every time he's out there. So yeah, just wanted to say that too. I really very much enjoyed seeing another Mox Tokyo Dome experience. Even if the match itself, it was just a bit spotty, wasn't it? It was a throwaway three-way, really. It was, the people in there are so good that it was only going to be so bad, but certainly not memorable outside of those individual spots.
Yeah, and a device to get the title off Ospreay, but not done in the way that you kind of think after all these big matches he had, these like kind of great singles matches, he was having to defend his titles, like the match against Shota Umino, like, and then you have it like this. It's like,
bit of a shame,
like,
isn't it?
It is a bit of a shame.
It was cool. I very much enjoyed that too. And yeah, if it is the end of Ospreay in New Japan, whatever you can say about Ospreay in real life, and don't get us wrong, we have said that too. We've been plenty critical of Will Ospreay in the past. If you're just going to talk Will Ospreay, the wrestler, like, if this is the end of his New Japan run, what a fucking story. Going from, us seeing him in Rev Pro and, immediately recognizing, I think as anyone saw him for the first time, that he was going to be something great, to seeing, like I said that on the Discord, seeing other podcasters and seeing the likes of Dave Meltzer, as he came into New Japan, recognize that he was going to be something great. He became that over those last 5 years in New Japan. It's been an unbelievable story if it is the end of it. Again, if we're just talking the in-ring and the wrestler himself. What a run Ospreay had over these last 5 years. You'd have thunk it when we're seeing him in those small rooms, mate, and that he was going to get to this point and be this wrestler that he is. New Japan's a massive part of it. Wasn't a given that it would work out so well, or maybe it was with the talent he's got.
I don't think we realised the kind of level of talent, but what they did there as well. And I know you briefly, we'll probably end up talking about when we talk about the commentary, but I do want to mention the set as well. And
Ramen mentions it there in the chat. That probably goes to why, I enjoyed Moxley's entrance so much at the Tokyo Dome. Yeah, go for it. What did you think of the overall presentation of WrestleKingdom and the set and everything?
Even if it wasn't 27,000, they got some stuff right with the setting for once. Like I felt like they managed to kind of hide, like it felt like it was a big crowds as well, if nothing else. For that impression of watching it, this felt like it felt like a big show. The set was back to the kind of crazy big sets. What we haven't got is the weird elaborate entrances we would get, like a Nakamura would get, or we'd have like, was it the guitarist of Megadeth leading out bloody like Tanahashi and stuff like that. We're not at that stage, but it had real spectacle to it. Which, I've spoken about how NOAH's production at times for a company that draws like much smaller crowds as like felt a lot better, and like their scale and their production and stuff. And here New Japan like felt they really kind of got it back, and I enjoyed it for that. I mean, in terms of the other stuff, like there's stuff about New Japan World where like the English commentary was out of sync, and so I had to like kind of shut it down and open it back up again.
If anyone
as
doesn't
well.
know, by the way, it's hidden behind the CC button on the website. And if you're using the app, I was using it on my Google TV. There is actually a setting in the background, a bit like like American remote, so you can switch it to Spanish. You can do that, or when you change the audio.
Oh right.
There is an option. It is there. It's just really well hidden. Because I was convinced that when I was watching the replay, the only option I had was Japanese commentary, which, saying that with certain moments on this show, I might have preferred.
They had Nagami back, didn't they, on commentary, which was like a fucking shocker. If I understood a word he said, but I was like, bloody hell, Nagami. We did have a bit in the Rambo when Iizuka appeared, and I was like, oh god, this is like a flashback to when he used to. Remember they used to chase him around?
Yeah, I used to threaten him with death. That was good. Yeah, Karen mentions there in the chat. Yeah, everyone had the white gear memo.
Yeah.
Everyone. I think Brian Alvarez pointed that out at one point that everyone who was wearing the white gear was losing, which of course got called out on commentary because that's something that we're living with since the Kevin Kelly days. And yeah, I should say, the commentary. I thought it stunk, but I would. Don't listen to me if you don't agree. I've never liked Chris Charlton. I never will like Chris Charlton. I think he's a fantastic translator, but I really think this iteration of the New Japan commentary desk, it just exposes what I've never liked about him in the first place. I've always liked him as a translator and as a person who jumps in with facts. I think Kevin Kelly kept him in his place for the most part, at least for the last couple of years, where this style of commentary from Charlton is built in. But he's not a good dramatic commentator. He's not good at, when he kind of bombs in all these facts during people's entrances and ruins big moments for me. It always feels overly pre-prepared and overly scripted, and he's just not a natural speaker with emotion for that type of thing. I do think this commentary desk now is going to be the worst part of him, because when he's sat in a booth opposite Luke Littler, who's man boy, who's I still don't believe what's his fucking bloke's name? He's fucking 21.
Walker Stewart.
Walker Stewart. Yeah, I've got it here on my notes. How the fuck? He sounds like he's 45, but it's given away. Like I say, that Danielson moment wasn't the biggest thing in the world, but it was obvious. He fucking wasn't born, man. He was barely born when Danielson had, that moment with Rocky. Because Rocky was good, but Rocky wants to point out very, very clearly that he'd had moments with Danielson in the Tokyo Dome before. He gave away his youth a little bit in moments like that. He's thoroughly professional and is clearly, ahead of his years. God bless him for having a level of voice and being able to bluff it in a lot of aspects of taking a massive gig from Kevin Kelly. But he's going to take his lead from Chris Charlton, and Chris Charlton, it just feels like is a little bit enjoying the switch in power dynamic a little bit too much, and there's just too much of him in his commentary team now, and all of his bad habits I think have been multiplied. I know that's an unpopular opinion, especially in our bubble. I know people enjoy Chris Charlton's work and used to enjoy the podcast that he did as well. So it's kind of a thing you're not allowed to say, but yeah, I feel like more people are joining my team now. JP is, the power has well and truly gone to that man's head. That's not to say he's completely worth it. There were still moments where he filled in a few facts and the translations at the end and all of that. He's absolutely got his use, but I was very much reaching for Muro and considering switching over to the Japanese language commentary for a lot of it. For me.
It was really disappointing, I think, in terms of the commentary, because I'm loath to criticise Walker Stewart because, as you mentioned, he's incredibly young. He's completely inexperienced in terms of and he's having to learn on the job on a very big stage in a number 3
He'll be a real sports commentator. By the time he turns 30, he'll be on proper TV. I do think that's there in him. But he's very young for the job now. And
it's quite strange. I suppose, what do we look for from a commentator? He's got the tone, he's got the kind of the cadence, he's got those type of things, even if he just lapses into kind of just general commentary speak, which makes him kind of nondescript as well. But like you say, it was about Charlton going, I'm the play-by-play guy. That's how he treated it. And it was actually, you need to have some clear delineation of what your role is, and Walker Stewart needs to be the one that leads it. That doesn't mean he just gets the final line in terms of closing out the show for the English commentary. It's more than that. He has to be kind of leading on the matches. And you think of all that stuff that he's obsessed with delivering in this dramatic way because he wants that to be the moment you sort of take away as the voice of like English New Japan. You think, what would a good commentator do? A good commentator would start introducing that stuff at the start of a match when it's relatively slow. Like that's when you would be introducing this stuff, and then you get the depth. So when people are like just settling into a match and maybe they're just kind of like, you know, in the early stages and it's not very like quick paced, like you've got those moments to kind of put that stuff in. But instead, like you say, he's just obsessed of doing it the moment they make their appearance. You've just got him talking over it as well. And I think Rocky without Kevin Kelly doesn't have that rapport with Walker Stewart, even if he would have obviously actively been involved in his hiring, because that's the kind of, but so it felt like Rocky wasn't like at the best as a result for that. And I like Rocky Romero, the commentator.
Yeah, I liked him jumping in with the Spanish translations at the end. That was, you know, it's not all bad. That was a nice little back and forth with Charlton and Rocky. And I get it. I think for most people, someone speaking English over Japanese wrestling is enough, and that's fine. But if you're gonna start comparing these booths to, you know, the great booths that even New Japan themselves have had in the past, that's my take on it. And people say it's sour grapes. I know Chris Charlton's not a fan of us either, but I think that the criticism isn't because of that. He doesn't like us because of the criticism. It's the other way around in that situation. But I'm never going to be turned around, I don't think, on that. And yeah, like I say, I know it's not a majority held opinion, but I've always got to know it.
Less is more with commentators. I thought this actually. I know we're going back into the darts the whole time, but I thought at times like that was the problem that Wayne Mardell had when he was kept on like.
You want more darts talk? We spent half an hour on
that. It less is more when it comes to a lot of this commentary. Like even like a Kent Walton on like World of Sport, it's just like kind of being this sort of authoritative voice who knew what they were saying when they said something. It was important, and you let the images do the work for you. And I don't like, and I think there's just this thing where he thinks I need to get my shit in. And I know all this stuff, so I'm going to throw it all in. And it's like, well, being a history book of New Japan isn't quite good enough. It's how you deliver that information to people. That'll be the stuff that really sticks in. Because instead, rather than a barrage of very serious Tokyo Dome facts that are being thrown at you as somebody's walking to the ring, it's like, can I just enjoy the fucking entrance? Yeah. So, but
yeah, always 2 years in a row now of just let Elevator play while you fucking shut the fuck up, Chris Charlton. That's for the big part.
And next year will be the benchmark of how good they are as a team.
Yeah, I'm willing to give Walker Stewart time. Like I say, he's extremely young and, you know, way past how good he should be at this stage in his career. So let's see. I hope you know, with confidence and time, he kind of, you know, leads that booth a little bit more than it felt like on this show. But you know, considering all of those factors, you can't necessarily criticize him too strongly, I wouldn't say. Other stuff on the show. Anything else you want to reference and matches wise that you enjoy? Or I'm with you on that. I go just one quick note on that because I know you're going to be talking about it. As much going in as I wasn't really into that because I was like, I've seen it 8 million times. You're absolutely right. The truncated time limit on it made it far more interesting than I thought it would be going in. Yeah, I agree with all your other praise on it. But yeah, I thought that was a highlight. What else was a highlight for you from an in-ring point of view?
From an in-ring point of view, I'm trying to think of the other stuff that I liked. I mean, actually, I say that I liked it. The booking afterwards, given that he's handed in his fucking notice, Tama Tonga defeating Shingo Takagi, like I kind of like in some ways I enjoyed it for what it was, like partly more because of Shingo, to be honest with you, rather than Tama Tonga. So having Tama Tonga win, and then he's like, all right, I'm off next month, which I'm like, good. Like you have more than done everything in New Japan that I ever want to see you do, and I kind of finished with that about 5 years ago.
That's when That's when I fully woke up this match. Like I was there for the start of the show, but like I said, it was like 2 hours after Dynamite had finished, or 3 hours after Dynamite had finished. So I did end up falling back asleep and having to catch it all in reverse later on. But that was pretty much my wake up point was this match, and I was like kind of like rubbing my eyes, going, "Is this good?" I suppose I should be shocked it's Shingo, but like this seems great. Am I wrong? Is this great? Our Discord was loving it, Twitter were loving it. Genuinely one of the best Tama Tonga performances I think I've ever seen. All the little callbacks to all the finishes of the ex Bullet Club leaders was a nice little touch as well. great near falls. I 100% believe Shingo had it with the old Matt Sydal, the what you used to call the Here It Is driver made in Japan as the Shingo version. Like, I bought that hook, line, and sinker. Genuinely great performance for Tama Tonga. Undone a little bit by him going in the press and saying I'm leaving in a month. Again, there might be developments of that on New Year's Dash tomorrow that we're not aware of at time of recording, but as a match goes, I thought it was really, really strong. And it was Shingo at Wrestle Kingdom, so of course it was. But this was probably the other match on the show I'd say was, above 4 stars.
Yeah. I mean, that's where I would go for it. It's like 4 stars, and kind of like I it's probably because I had low expectations because it was Tama Tonga, and immediately I feel like kind of disappointed. But like it, like you say, that made in Japan into the gun stun counter was just like fucking ridiculous. Like, it was, and what I hoped out of this, I suppose, thinking, well, they got the belt off Shingo. Is this rather like what I'd expect with Zack Sabre Jr., where you put them up around the top of the card as they should be? You want to play LIJ law and you insist on doing it a bit, fine. Do Shingo versus Naito then. I could watch that. Like, I could build myself up for that. I know I prefer out of fucking LIJ members involved, like, in this as well. But yeah, this was like a nice surprise as much as anything else. And it did. I will say this about the show in the main. I was able to watch what is a 4-hour pay-per-view in a relatively like kind of comfortable way. And it was only 13 minutes, not like particularly long. It doesn't like overstay its welcome. And so, like, I would say 4 stars for that.
Yeah, maybe go lean 4.25 on that one. Zach and Tanner, I'll probably go 3.75 to 4.
Yeah,
Roman and Despy was good in a vacuum. Again,
just
what's your appetite for seeing them do it again? I mean, let's not have the conversation about these lads should be heavyweights, but they fucking should, and whatever. That's just even El Phantasmo was kicking off about that in an interview, saying like how ridiculous it was when I think he pointed out like we did like 6 fans with Chase Owens, and because Chase Owens is the heavyweight, and even though we were the junior tag team champions, it'd be his music and he'd lead us out, and it was like, what the fuck, man, he's smaller than me, like. Bullshit, and we all know it is. Spent more time on it than it deserves, but felt like it could have felt like a rerun, but I did think it was strong enough. If you're not bored of them, that's the other recommend I think I'd have from the matches on the show.
Yeah, for that one as well. I mean, I wanted to, I suppose I wanted to like Yuya Uemura versus Yota Tsuji, but it was
all right, pretty good.
It was all right, but it was Yota Tsuji should be winning that. Yuya Uemura was spinning his heels in Impact not that long ago, and Yota Tsuji is someone who has got that immediate crowd connection, and you kind of want to be putting into if you want a bolter from the field to kind of put into the proper main event mix, he's the man. Like, I think of all the other ones they've brought back, I think he's kind of as good a job as they're doing with Shota Umino at points. Like, I do say at points as well. Even if they gave him, like, was it a Shota Taker? Or was it the Japanese badass entrance of him motorcycling in? Like, it should have been better than what it was. Like, in some ways, this should have been like a sort of like a futuristic version of a Tomohiro Ishii match that you throw in and go, it's really good, and we're going to get more from these guys in the future, which we are. But I thought it was a bit underwhelming. I was like 3.5 stars, and I kind of thought, maybe this would be something that might end up delivering a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, Karen asked there, won't Tsuji be queuing up for Naito? I actually thought the loss might end up being counteracted by him coming out at the end and, doing the roll call and him turning. Obviously, they wanted to, didn't need to wait another 3 years for that to happen. So, I get it. Why they just got it over with rather than doing any kind of turn. But I think that turn's going to be coming at some point. And I think his day will absolutely come. Any other thoughts on the rest of the show? I saw the Rambo, and that's one thing I didn't go back and rewatch the Rambo. I saw that in a half day state first thing this morning. They put about as much thought into it as I think we did in the run up to it. It was a battle royal. There's not really much else to say there, is there? But anything else catch you out? Anything else you want to mention from the undercard or the pre-show?
Just in terms of, I just want to very quickly mention about the Rambo. Well, first of all, seeing like Fujita Hayato in there, who was like wrestling in All Japan like the other day, it was like, okay, this fucking odd. Seems like a pretty inexplicable choice to throw in. And Takashi Iizuka, who looked better than when he was an active wrestler, when he retired a few years ago. I didn't believe it was him. It was like he's lost a load of weight and he's still massively in shape. He can't really walk, but he still came back doing like the fucking iron glove stuff. And I was like, this is weird. Is he looking kind of better than what he did? And he was completely broken down from when he went. But yeah, moving on from it, from other stuff in there, the junior tag match, I suppose it was the first thing I ended up seeing. So like my brain wasn't properly tuned in, but I was completely distracted by Francesco Akira's weird mask. Like, I just thought that was like completely needless there as well.
What's TJP doing? What's his fucking name now?
Yeah,
El Bummo or something like that. What the fuck's he doing?
I don't know. I don't know what it is, because he does some good stuff. He could do some good wrestling, but this just felt like we need a junior tag match to open up the show. Here you go. And that's what you'll get. You'll get a junior tag match and you'll get a title change and they win the titles back and you go, And it was a match and Dan Maloney got to wrestle on a proper WrestleKingdom card, which I imagine, it's interesting. Nice tribute
from him to Curtis as well.
Yeah. That was really good to see. I laughed at, I didn't laugh actually. I was like, fucking hell. I was just more deflated. But Kaito Kiyomiya, him and Shota Umino.
Sorry, just to say that's the new name TJP is going by. Aswank, basically. Anyway, yeah, sorry.
How does that even work? Even if you combine those words together, it doesn't make any sense from a like kind of logistical perspective. But anyway, I'll move on from that. Kaito Kiyomiya and Shota Umino losing to Evil and Ren Narita, and I was just like, put my fucking head in my hands. Like at that moment, I went, they're still going to keep on doing that shit, and I'm sure they won, so they could have him interfere at the end as well. But it was like Kaito Kiyomiya, it was like, fuck me. You've got all these wrestlers you could put him in there with, and you put them in this. Him and Shota Umino have been doing a good job building up, and it just felt like a complete fucking waste. Putting them in there, you could have had them wrestle each other for God's sakes in a Yu or a Yota Tsuji way, and would have been certainly better than that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So yeah, there we are. I guess we will catch up with all of the comings and goings from New Year's Dash, presumably on next week's Spotlight. I think will be the time for that. But yeah, any big news movements do happen. Stay tuned to the Patreon as well. But yeah, anything else to say on New Japan, JP? Not like I say, same time next year.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm necessarily have my mind changed on the current state of New Japan. We are very much in a different era. I'll be back for the new one. We'll see what happens in the meantime.
But yeah, there was some other stuff going on in Japan, if we want to move on to that. And I'm not going to spend like forever kind of going through these matches. I think some of them like people have kind of known about. I mean, it was a big weekend for All Japan. Did you see any of these? Did you see any of the All Japan or the NOAH stuff at all?
Only like the newsworthy stuff, obviously the Kota Ibushi news stories we've
try to watch that
about. But yeah, we've had a lot to catch up over the last couple of days since the New Year period. So yeah, there's probably some of this that's going to bleed into I'd expect next week's Spotlight as well. But, let us know what you saw, what you see.
So, I mean, I'd go All Japan first of all. So if you're talking about a company that did well, and it was the kind of obvious big match, it was something that we'd spoken about, and it was on Triller, which I thought was fascinating for All Japan. It shows a lot that Triller wanted to get it in, and it was Katsuhiko Nakajima versus Kento Miyahara, which was, one of the best matches of last year. And like you'd argue for this one, it kind of rivaled it, and it was in front of, what was it, like 2,600, which in All Japan terms, like is really good. It looked like a cracking little arena, the Yoyogi National Stadium Gymnasium #2, not to be confused with the #1, which you know very, very well. In this one, it was like a nice kind of like little, like kind of dome atmosphere, like this, like I say, you probably get about 4,000 or so in there, and it looked good. And the entrances were cracking. Kento did his usual one, and he came out first, and then Nakajima came out to one that was a combination of Inoki and Muhammad Ali, while wearing like he come out with a former president of New Japan as well. I thought, why don't you take a slash on Baba's grave while you're at it as well at the same time? Like if you're going the whole fucking hog. But they had another fucking brilliant match on here as well, and it was particularly because the crowd, I thought, made it for this one, and the fact that how much they were behind Kento Miyahara here, and like the first. Like it was almost like the first half of the match, he's just getting the shit beaten out of him, and like with those kicks and the way that Nakajima delivers them, so they just sound like bullets there as well. And it was like fucking great. And then it got like into Kento's like comeback and build up there as well. But speaking about surprising endings, like it had him tapping out to like an armbar there as well. I was like, well, fucking hell, I wasn't like quite expecting that. But like this was like the argument for having like kind of a Nakajima around the place is he is a really interesting prospect in All Japan. And you can argue that like he's had an immediate effect on kind of business, and they've got like I even watched the Charlie Dempsey match as well. Then
I heard it was better. That's what I've read.
Do you know? I was thinking about this. Is it better
supposed
than
to have a go at Charlie Dempsey because he's Regal's son? But
yeah,
I don't know if the evidence is necessarily there. He seems like he's all right.
I personally, he was fine. Do you know who he was closer to? He was closer to Timothy Thatcher. And they even had him. It's the first time I'd heard him talk. Was in the build up. Was like. Because you expect him to sound like his dad, like he's from Blackpool, and he isn't. Clearly, he's raised in the States, isn't he? That's where he's kind of
same with Dave Finlay, isn't it? You're half expecting to have an Irish accent, but of course, yeah. You know, unlike his dad and his granddad. Did his granddad get an OBE this week? I'm sure that was a thing.
Yeah, he did. Like, I'm not sure of that. Was that a Liz Truss appointee? Like, if so, that was one of
King's Honors or something. I don't know what's going on. But yeah, Dave Finlay, senior.
That's a left field pick. You can give a posthumous one to Giant Haystacks. No, couldn't have done that in the meantime. But there you go. I wouldn't have seen that one necessarily coming. But like his match against, the match with Kento Miyahara, I'd go 4.5 on. I just thought it was fucking brilliant, and it felt like a proper big time main event. And the crowd are fucking loving it as well. This one obviously wasn't as good. What I thought is that like in the main, he looked like he's still rough around the edges, and there'd be stuff that he would do, like he'd go for some quite weird pinfalls, or you wouldn't see him capitalizing on stuff, so he didn't move with like kind of a pace. But he's very much like kind of out of his comfort zone being in this situation at Kurikan in particular. And I thought he did fine. Like the match went 19 minutes. It wasn't like the best in the world. You'd probably go 3.5 to 3.75. His stage of his career, that's pretty good. I was there thinking, genuinely, is this better than anything his old man has done? Outside of he had to wrestle Shinya Hashimoto. Now there's a question. And that's Shinya Hashimoto. So like, I was there thinking, okay, this is like an interesting counterpoint. If he's smart going down this route of being like more like it felt more like more like a Timothy Thatcher like kind of clone. There's some gifs you can see around him doing like kind of like spinning headlock and stuff like that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, did he work as like an international like challenger, like as a world title level challenger? You know, at this stage in his career, that was the bit that I was lost in translation for me. It was like I get bringing him in as a young boy or as somewhere in the mid card.
I mean, this is the thing. I don't expect him to hang around. It's not like he'll be doing the extended tour. And I'm sure they thought, well, we'll get in this guy because he's not going to cost us anything, WWE, and maybe some of the international fans will come and see it. In which case, that's like a weird view of how the foreign market goes. He looked his equal. He had near falls, like some good near falls as well. So it wasn't like he was completely like overshadowed the whole time. And he didn't wrestle like he was someone who didn't know what the fuck he was doing. Like, there'll be worse Triple Crown matches that'll be produced in 2024 than this. And I thought in the main he was decent, but he looked very set up for being a wrestler in Japan as opposed to one on NXT.
Yeah.
I don't see it. Like yeah, it just doesn't translate to it. Not his style or anything else. In some ways, if you told him, look, can he have an excursion? Because let's face it, all of this, it didn't feel like an invasion of WWE into All Japan. So the kind of like sky is falling talk didn't feel like that to me.
We've had this moment, right?
Yeah.
Oh, the Cruiserweight Classics coming sounds great. They're gonna add to our little punk rock promotion. Absolutely, nothing to worry about there. This is how they get you, JP. Don't let them fool you a second time. It's all over. All Japan's dead. Puro is dead.
If Trick Williams goes in and wins it next month, then maybe, yeah. And then we suddenly end up with fucking scripts over there wrestling for the junior title. Then I suppose it'll be a bit more kind of...
It just feels like vanity right now. Regal's lag got a button.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we know at the minute, isn't it, really? Like, tangibly, presumably, there's something going on in the background, whether it's a minority ownership or who knows what might happen. You see him.
Simon Inoki rumored. I saw being brought up on our Discord as well, and he's a fucking clown. That bloke, like, he's responsible for a lot of the like daft shit that fucking happened. Like in there, so that does make you worry, particularly at a time when people are getting hot about All Japan. And I wonder whether or not the curse of us will happen, whereby a promotion starts doing well, we watch it, and immediately they start to do shitty booking decisions, and we sort of end up turning off it halfway. I do, and I just get burnt so many times, and I'm just like, okay, I'll wait and see. Like when Shotaro Ashino's back as well, which is good, but I mean, he wrestled with a smile on his face, but I mean, after the Fulham and West Ham games, I wouldn't have been surprised if he like fucking nearly in tears before that as well, and as dismayed. And we spoke about it on the pre-show when Matty loves to ask me, do you need a number 9 or not? Which he's like, I'll fucking take one at this point, but that's a whole other conversation. It's on the pre-show, which you go to patreon.com/grapple to hear all about that. Something you won't be hearing about on the pre-show though is some of the NOAH stuff, which I want to mention actually the positive from this show, which is a very obvious positive. There's 5,500 there. Just over 5,000 at the Ariake Arena on there. But the stuff I would recommend.
Did they ever find Kota Ibushi's ankles? Did they turn up anywhere?
Oh, that's a hard watch. Like, it's such a hard watch.
I've seen that when we did the New Year's Day news show. It's not an easy watch, is it at all? It's almost that.
No.
Yeah, it's not a hate watch. It's just it's an uncomfortable watch altogether. It's embarrassing.
He's lost it.
He's done. He's done.
He's done.
He's cooked.
He's
For
done.
good or bad reason, he's cooked.
Yeah,
like, just let him get your money, mate, and take some more time off. It's needed. Yeah,
put him as a trainer. Put him backstage. See if there's value for him doing that. But yeah, I just
even
thought.
From himself.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but if you are going to watch stuff from this show, I'd recommend, and you can imagine the match as soon as I mention the names, Ishii versus Kitamiya. Masa Kitamiya, Tomohiro Ishii.
If I've been home longer than 24 hours after seeing that, that's the one I would have picked out of this lot. That sounds right up my street. It sounds like it delivered.
And you wanted more of it. You wanted them to tag together, which is something I know the commentary brought up on there. And I thought, these two as a tag team. Ishii going on loan there, which I know has not worked out. And there's checkered history where you think, in theory, it's good. New Japan will send across, when they were hot, you thought it'd be good. And they ended up fucking killing the business in NOAH for ages. But it was really like this match was exactly kind of what you'd expect, but really good. And really delivered, and it was fucking brutal. And Kitamiya did a bit of bleeding from his forehead as well. I also recommend, and I didn't expect this to be as much fun as it was, but Keno versus Manabu Soya. Because I always thought Manabu Soya is like very limited, but it said a lot about Keno. Like I thought it was like particularly towards like the kind of ending, it had you believing that Manabu Soya was going to win, which is something I thought, well, there isn't the drama there, and should have gone on as the main event. Frankly, given the 35 minutes or so that Ibushi Marufuji went on for. So, yeah, I looked at that and I thought to myself, do you know what? Like, that was a really good, like you say with Keno, like stiff fucking kicks, like he's a big old hoss, Manabu Soya, did a diving fucking clothesline for God's sakes. But it was, and Congo's gone, which means my t-shirt really no longer has any purpose now. That stable has gone along the way. But that was I thought that was a really good match. So they would be like the positives to take from it. There was all the other stuff I didn't see on the show. There was like an elimination match that involved House of Torture. So I immediately went, nope, not watching that in the slightest. But yeah, I don't know. Will Noah come good this year? Probably not. I'm going to predict it.
DDT, what's going on there? Why doesn't that happen?
I think they are. Doing something with DDT. No, All Japan are doing something with DDT. Sorry, I forget. I'm getting mixed up there. They do the cyber fight stuff, but they never do that with like DDT, and they could have some interesting stuff there. But it's just that the roster's a fucking shit show, and the booking's just like slightly all over the place, and they do loads of wacky. And as soon as you decide that you might invest a little bit in Noah, like the next main event is Keno versus Go Shiozaki. Which, given previous history, you'd imagine to be quite good. But again, not going to hold my breath on that at all.
Yeah. And I'm guessing Stardom, that's coming the weekend. You'll catch up with that. Matthew, was that
a proper catch up on that. I mean, I've only seen the main event of Dream Queendom, and again, I'd recommend very much in the chat. Go to Post Wrestling, read Karen's write ups on these. She knows Stardom better than anyone else in the West. I'll go along with that. And it was Micah defeating Suzu Suzuki in the main event, which actually I thought they ended up putting up on YouTube because the stream itself had ballsed up along the way. But I actually thought it was a really good, strong match. Like ultimately, I suppose I just squeezed it in literally before here. It was like 20 minutes long, one with the Michinoku driver as well. There was some, like, Suzuki does that spot I really like where they just sort of get a wrestler to sit on the middle rope, and then I know it doesn't really make any sense why you do it, and they slide underneath and then do a German back on them as well.
Always like that. Yeah.
And because it's Joshi, like it was kind of like really good fun there, and there was some stuff going on with the table which wasn't quite like working, which is just don't do table spots in Japan. But I could tell everyone that, unless you want to get a funny image like Alex Coughlin, really. But it was like, I'm not as invested in it. It felt like I was kind of lost watching, like, in terms of the significance. I know Suzu Suzuki is someone who's clearly like more of a prodigious talent, but yeah, like I say, over the weekend, hopefully catch up on it a bit more. So I'll have seen the pay-per-view show that they also ran on the 4th, which seems like a weird choice of day to do it, but yeah, that's Japanese wrestling. So that's pretty much that's the stuff that I've managed to squeeze in, along with an AEW pay-per-view, Dynamite, fucking WrestleKingdom. I think we did quite well, mate.
Well, hopefully there's managed to get it in less than 2.5 hours. Hopefully people have gotten to the end here, as well as a lot of wrestling out there. We've put a lot of audio out there as well. So if you're still working through it, hopefully everyone's enjoying the crappies, Ask Grapple, as well as the news update from the other day. We'll have 5-1 top 5 biggest disappointments coming out this weekend on the Patreon. Schedule will be released tomorrow. We're looking at the first year of Brock Lesnar in WWE. Would it have been at that point? Would it be? Along with King of the Mountain over there, Chris Platt. So yeah, look forward to that coming this month. We'll also be doing a Royal Rumble flashback this month, which I'm sure everyone will enjoy. And if we manage to get a hooky copy, there'll be a film club coming on Iron Claw, as well as the return of Brett John, as well as the return of Time as well.
Yes.
You lads get up to with Time as well. I've seen some of the background working out there. Liam's been sending through. It looks like another corker of a show coming up. So yeah, I think if you thought December was busy, January's going to be busy as well. So patreon.com/grapple, or as we've had a few in the live chat tonight,
yes,
YouTube memberships are open. There is a slightly cheaper rate that's currently available over there that will get you the live shows. If so, that's all you're after. Live spotlight, live weekend show. Head over there and you can get us a $3.99, I believe it is right now, depending on your currency of choice. Some of those currencies do better for us than others, but yeah, check it out if you haven't already. If you want to take the dive and watch us live with Spotlight, next week's will be a Tuesday, but usually on a Tuesday, and weekend show on a Friday. But yeah, that's about it, really, JP. Else to throw in there.
That's it. I think you've gone through all of the plugs there, mate. I mean, yeah, just like all of those places to go, patreon.com/grapple or youtube.com/@grapple. Again, I don't know why they do the at bit.
I was just checking to see if there was any last minute news we missed tonight. Apparently, the collective will put out their schedule for WrestleMania, mate. So that'll be here soon enough. You'll be sat there watching Bloodsport, wondering why you're watching Bloodsport on Thursday, April the 4th. That'll come round. But yeah, we've got through the Christmas New Year period. So yeah, that'll be coming and hitting us over the head in the not too distant future as well. So yeah, look forward to all of that. But yeah, on that note, thank you live patrons for tuning in. Thank you audio patrons, and thank you YouTube listeners and everybody else wherever you are listening to this. We will catch you once again for a Tuesday Spotlight, regular weekend show next week, and all the normal bonus shows back to normal in 2024. But yeah, thank you for listening. We'll catch you again next week.
Bye.
Good night all.
weak, but when you step into the ring with him, your chances look bleak. He's awesome with computers, even better with math, but when it comes to grappling, he is a psychopath. So you don't wanna cross him, all his matches are lit, cause when he throws out a euro, it's a critical hit. Right now I'm here to tell you something to make you understand that the game he plays in Sonic, it's Super Chapman Land.